Had even tipped itself. I don't even know why I did that. As we get into our welcome to the, as we always do around this time, Friday night lectures, Friday night class. Woo! Greetings. Tonight, this feel good after the hiatus at vacation. That spiritual moment. No church in a while. I was out there. Feel real good. Alpha and beta, or the spiritual egos. It's a good time to get into this, especially with the new moon energy, clearing out the space, bringing ourselves into that new space with ourselves. Nah, my retreat ended yesterday. The last day of the trip was yesterday, but today was like that's the moment of reflections of the retreat. Like that's me and my retreat, just chilling out and just embracing the aspect of that energy. It didn't end early, but it ended early because it started raining where I was at. It was like the hurricanes and whatever, like the tropical storm Elsa. But I was like, it was my last day there anyway. So yesterday was a real chill day. But it had me really thinking about necessity. I was really getting real deep into the aspects of necessity and authenticity. And understanding authenticity is of that higher aspects of ourselves. But in order to tap into our authenticity, similar to what we've talked about, your integrity and your humility are only found in the darkest moments of your life. So your integrity is only found in the darkest moments or in your shadow. Your integrity, your humility, coming into your authenticity would be challenging these aspects or these ego, the spirit, the same way that you carrying forward everything that you carry from this space down here in the physical aspect based on survival or necessity, and why a lot of the things that we have inside of our lives are actually based in necessity. That friend, that family member, those conversations you keep having, those are only based on necessity. They're only based on the necessity, based on you protecting that image. The last post that I posted, and I made as a clip and sent out to everybody in Messenger, was that conversation that you're having with your sister, brother, homeboy, homegirl, all of these aspects about their relationships is an example of emotional paraphrasing, which we're going to get into tonight, or living in that prison complex or that emotional paraphrasing. And the best way for me to explain emotional paraphrasing is that conversation that you had with your mother, someone has with their mother or their father about the uncle, about the traumatic experience, and it's never heard. And we talk about these emotions, you're developing your emotional, you're in the adolescent stage, you're developing that emotional identity. A lot of times when we're having these conversations, and they always seem to be constant, and you're noticing, especially now with this new moon and Cancer energy, so it's a new program set up for you, this new setup for you programming yourself. That conversation you having with your homegirl or your homeboy getting hit upside the head all the time, or your sister or your brother, what you're seeing in that space to keep that space together so that projection lives, you're seeing the bad aspects of your parents, or you're seeing the bad aspects of your whatever relative point of a traumatic experience in that space. And for them, they're seeing the good aspects, especially when we talk about family aspects. So let's say your sister or your brother, they keep getting abused and used for all of their money. They're seeing the good aspects or the aspects they wish they could fix about their parents, the same parent that you had. You're seeing the bad aspects or the negative aspects in their mate. This is the aspects of the infinity complex. breaking it down into this biochemical aspect in your DNA of how your trauma connects you to either the lower aspects of the physical or into the higher aspects of yourself. This is how we create these identities. This is how you sit here creating all these identities all the time that you're trying to maintain. The same motherfucker that was, think about the motherfucker that was a gangster. You was out in them streets. You was out in the streets hard. And then when they go to jail, then they find Islam. They find religion. They become a Moor. They become whatever it is. It's that's holding on to the same identity. They have not learned. They're just still hiding behind that identity. That's that we're going to get into that affinity complex, get deep into emotional paraphrasing, and whatever else comes out as we sit here getting into these lectures, getting into this class. Coming into the understanding, everything in your space work for you. Everything that's in your space work for you. You got to take yourself out of the mindset of it's working against you, it's against you, all of those aspects. That's all in the survival complex. The best way to explain the Kabbalah and the tree of life is, remember when you go back to when you were born, in the crowning, you're crowning. Now go through every aspect of what your mother went through. Yeah. Go through the aspect with yourself of your mother. Go through the aspects of your mother, the gateway that you came through, understanding your mother had her traumas, her experiences. Her and your pops got together, their traumas, their experiences, the unhealed wounds, the aspects that came through that cycle and everything. And this is going to help you get deeper into your shadow work of you trying not to sit there and be like, but my mother has to admit this and my father has to admit this. They don't have to admit anything. It's not that they don't have to, it's just that they can't. You were crowned. You were crowned to deal with those aspects. You came through that portal to deal with those things based in your contract. That way, everything that lined up is not that they can't heal from it or can't deal with it. It's the fact that you are the initiator of that. You are the initiator of that healing process. But until you understand this, that's all in your spiritual contract. Everything that you talking about, your mother and her relationships, father with his relationships, Rolling Stones and all of these aspects, as long as you have not dealt with them, they keep repeating themselves. That energy is rooted in that. That energy is connected. That energy is now connected in this affinity complex. It's connected to that lower aspect of the physical. So that unhealed wound, when we want to talk about going all the way back to unhealed wounds, insecurity, all the sexual abuses, all of these narratives have to be brought to the surface. That's why it's so important to make these conversations normalized. So when we're dealing with them, when we see it on TV, when we see it in the illusion, we can assess when it bothers us. Instead of us seeing, that's why they always against us and they want to do this to us, this, and us. Take this thought process right here. You're the root to all of this. We're the roots to all of this. Nothing can be created unless they have that chaos spirit that Bobby Hemmett talked about. We have to bring this to a point to where it's no longer we have to take ourselves out of the comfort zone. A lot of the issues that we do not deal with, the reason why we can't deal with them is because they're outside of our comfort zone. The way to heal from the trauma, the traumatic experiences, the way to deal with these things, stepping into our shadow work, it's all outside of your comfort zone. Your shadow work is not inside of your comfort zone. The anchors or the tethers that are used to create the shadows are inside of your comfort zone. But you can't pull up an anchor You can't pull up the anchor from where it's at. You got to be on the boat. Yeah. Yeah, we got to face them head on. We got to make that shit. This shit has to become a normal aspect. We spend so much time bringing the problems to the surface based on the necessity, based on survival. And tonight we're going to get really deep into the difference between your authentic self and that aspect of you living based in the identity based on necessity. A lot of the things that you keep doing and a lot of the things I remember I kept doing in a lot of times in my life, it was based on the necessity to remain in the identity that I made, the adolescent or the emotion, to stay using the same emotional paraphrasing that came into the emotional taglines, that became that behavior. A lot of the conversations that you having from a broken space with yourself. So let's say you in a relationship and you keep having arguments with your man all the time. You first got to assess, you got to understand that if you went through some events in your earlier parts of your childhood, remember we talked about emotional development last week. If I sit here with the emotional developments of my childhood and I have sexual traumas and aspects that I've repressed, remember, my unseen creates my space. So now I can look at that and pinpoint why when I was in certain relationships, based on my traumatic experiences with my mother, not trusting my mother because she stole from me and things of that narrative, now I start looking at my relationships, all of my relationships until I dealt with my maternal wounds, I was looking for my mother. All of those aspects where I was protecting and providing, I was becoming my father or my pops in that situation because I was still looking for my mother. I was still trying to use what I learned unconsciously and embedded in that affinity complex to combine the certain things to remain in that identity, that to keep that identity or that mask from my ego intact. So in some spaces when I was sitting there and I was extra being protective and I was being provided, I was providing and I was protecting, what I was really doing, I was demonstrating the same fear complex that my pops would use. Same fear techniques that my pops would use. If I didn't accept it, it just repeated itself over and over and over again. This is that aspect of that affinity complex. This is that necessity. As long as you are stuck with the necessity, and necessity is the highest point of your humanity. When we look at the aspects of when you going down deep and we taking this shit upside down and you're going into your crowning, you got to get out of that fit. This is what it means to get out of that physical realm or the material aspect. The material is simply a byproduct, which led me to what I was saying earlier, that tree. Now think about this tree that you came up. Think about this tree that you sprouted out because you're the root. You're the root. You're the root. Your traumas are the root to your tree. Your experiences are the roots to your tree. So think about what's going to grow from your tree. Everything from the base to the roots, from the roots to the base, all the way out to the branches. Think about what's going to come out into your space. Everything that's unhealed is going to be strains onto your tree. Everything that you're going to look at is going to make you have a distaste for humanity. Transmute that. You need that distaste for humanity. Because as long as you're looking at humanity as I can save it, you're always going to try to see yourself in it. You're always going to say, I don't want nobody to go through what I went through. I'm trying to save everybody. You can't save everybody. The only reason you want to try to save everybody a lot of times, and the honest point to it is because you see yourself in them. So until I accept that I see myself in others and what I'm seeing in others and what I'm reacting to in others with others is basically seeing myself, the relationships cannot do what they needed to do. So the betrayal would hurt. But what was the betrayal feeding from? The betrayal, cheating, the misuse of money, the miscommunications, the no comprehension, the condescending tones, the passive aggressive behavior, the abandonment issues, the rejection wounds, trying to maintain this mentality or maintain this identity. All of that was within that affinity complex. The lower or the higher. You're shifting into the higher aspects. We're shifting into the higher aspects of the affinity complex. See, a lot when you're stuck in the material world, you're stuck on the physical aspects. Yes. That's exactly what it is. You're breaking these limits based on everything that you're going to do. Remember, is to challenge the necessity. That perception that false perception of necessity. If I sit here and I say, for example, just using the fast example, I've done a 30-day fast, I've done a 40-day fast. I've done a 30-day fast, I've done a 40-day fast, I've done earlier on, I did a 60-day fast, and all of those pushed me past the limits of what I needed as a necessity based on survival. The more that you push yourself past this point of what the necessities based on survival, you now can start integrating with your shadow, because you're no longer in need of trying to survive. Your body's surviving based on all the emotional conduits that you brought into that space. So remember, you eat with your emotions. You eat with your emotions. You do everything everything's based in your emotions. Everything's attracted to you based on your emotions. If you go back and think about the times that you ate at McDonald's when you were little and you got a Happy Meal, you were happy as fuck that you got a Happy Meal. You were eating with the emotion. So because soon as the moment your mom said you had McDonald's at the house, you was mad as hell. You were eating with emotion. Therefore, whatever your mom made at the house, you ate it because you were based on being angry. So now when you move forward in correspondence, all you're remembering and all you're pulling from is an aspect that at one time your mom said you couldn't go to McDonald's. You got some McDonald's money, and now you out here in the world, and now you consider it to be a necessity based on the physical aspect, just because you can go out and you can eat anytime that you want to eat. Because you now thinking about necessity based on that physical aspect. The highest level of humanity is at the lowest level of your spirituality and being in your spiritual sense. When you going through the aspects of that when you're integrating with your shadow, you're stepping out of your comfort zone. That's the only way you can assess those anchors. You cannot assess and pull these anchors or assess these tethers that are within your shadows, or the anchors that keep you in your comfort zone from inside of your comfort zone. You can pull and pull all you want, because that's basically all you're doing. Every time that you yell out, I'm an independent bitch, I'm an independent nigga, I'm a real nigga, I'm this and I'm that, and all you're doing is tugging at the anchor and dragging the anchor a couple of miles, and it's heavy as hell. So now you're saying the weight of the world on your shoulders because it's hard to be a real nigga. It's hard to be an independent. It's hard to be an independent woman. It's hard to be this because can't nobody understand my story or my struggle. Your shit's upside down. Your root chakra, think about the birth process, and it's going to make you go, we're going to get even deeper. Think about the birthing process if you went through the birth over here. And when you came, remember, I just said you just came out, you were crowned through the womb. Doctor smack you on your ass. Go research that aspect of niggas getting smacked on the ass, getting done in the ass. It turns your whole energy system upside down. That smack was your first initiation of flipping your energy upside down. That's why you have to dive. That's why you got to go down before you go back up. You ain't going back up. Because if you go back up based on the old aspects, not doing your work, not doing that internal work, you're only going to go back to your root chakra that you're sitting at. That's when they say the devil fell. When they say Lucifer fell from grace, that nigga fell. And then they imprinted that into your head. So you're like, I don't want to fall. I don't ever want to fall. I don't ever want to go through this. Your mind's stuck in survival. So that's all you ever think about. All you ever think about is falling. All you ever think about is failing. All you thinking about is failing, falling, not being done wrong again, somebody not hurting you, and somebody not going through what you're going through. So you stuck in this false sense of protecting that identity so you can stay within that space with yourself. So now that argument starts to make more sense on why every time you have that argument with your homegirl or your sister, your brother, whoever it is, and you keep trying to tell them about their man or tell them about their woman, they cannot see the negative aspects that you see, because what you're seeing is your mother, whether you knew your mother or not, whether you knew your father or not. That's what you're seeing inside of that space. Or whatever relative raised you, or whatever relative did something to you in a traumatic experience, that's what you keep seeing. That's what you keep surviving on. That's why you look so deep into the aspects of, when you look at the crown chakra, which is now down here in the lower realm, and you got to raise that energy up, and you got to go through the cycles of raising this energy to the higher surface. What are you crowned in? Think about everything that you sit here, you holding on to. That's what holds your crown. Your trauma is now the crowned receptor of everything that you're doing. Because without the trauma, what would you be? Without the trauma, you would have no identity. If you went through a whole good aspect of your life, guarantee you still gonna look for some bad shit, because you looking for some negative because you want to experience it. This is like the good. It's like you going across the street and you got friends across the street. I remember they had like single parent households and all of that good shit. But I had two parents in the household, and when I would tell them like all they do is argue and all this shit, they look at me like I lost my. They're like, man, I wish I had two parents in the house, because they only could see based on what they came from. You got to understand it. Everybody out here got a purpose and a point. They got their own complex that they got to deal with. You ain't. All you're seeing is, I wish my mother would have left my pops. That's the same thing. What you're healing is a generational wound. The same way that your grandparents stayed together. Mm-hmm. You sitting there mad because your aunt and your grandparents stayed together for 62 years, 78 years, 80 some odd years, and you thought it was based on love. It was based on survival. So you're using that. You're seeing the good of them being together, and you're using these aspects of what they were doing as being good. He provided, he protected, he did all of these things. You don't know what the fuck that nigga did before that. You don't know what that nigga did behind the closed doors. So you can't keep anchoring yourself to this false perception, because every time that you go to it, all you're going to be using is emotional paraphrasing. The same emotional paraphrasing, since that energy being used in that space of your grandmother and your grandfather is the same shit that brought together your mom and your pops. So when your pops decided, I'm not going to stay with your mother, he actually broke a cycle, unconsciously broke a cycle. Or your mother didn't stay with your pops, broke a cycle. It didn't go addressed. The cord wasn't cut properly. So that root was still left there to fester. Because the original reason was based on escape. It was based on maintaining an identity. It wasn't based in love. So if they never knew what love was, if I don't know what love is, and I'm out here in this world looking for love in all the wrong places, I'm looking for survival. I'm looking for a reason to survive. I'm looking for a reason to provide based on the traumas that I've been through. So now I get stuck in this complex. Mm-hmm. So I'm stuck in that emotional complex, and I'm searching for that. You got to get rid. This one I tell you about being really honest with yourself, because until I realized that I was trying to replace my mother or prove to my pops that I could be what if I do the things that my mother always is complaining about in relationships, I was only looking for that aspect. So I had to be honest with myself. So until I became honest with this aspect and went through my reset, every one of my relationships were damn near the fucking same. They always had the same emotional paraphrasing, the same emotional catalyst. And every time that I went into a space, when that emotional catalyst wasn't fed or that chaos wasn't fed, yes, it's okay to rewrite that narrative. It's okay to rewrite that narrative. Think about, I've talked about this before. I talked about it a couple of lectures ago. The aspects of, I remember seeing the streams of thought. I remember having a conversation with my pops way, way back. And I remember he said some shit to me that had me sitting there thinking to myself. And then it was only after reflection and actually really doing my shadow work, not avoiding my shit, and really doing my shadow work. And my pops was like, I can see you going down the same paths to things that I did. I just don't want you to repeat them. I was like, damn, like, how do you see this, this, and this? He saw it in unconsciously in that aspect. The spirit would use him in that force of every relationship that I was in. There was a reason that he was like, there was a reason that he said what he said and how he said it. I remember one of the first relationships I was in when I was in high school. And my pops was like, that ain't your girlfriend. We got to get her paperwork. We got to see where her family from. We got to know we got to know what her family's about and all of this. Me still in that adolescent phase, still trying to prove that I can do shit in the earlier on phase. It was like, man, you can't tell me who I can't love and she loved me and all this shit and all of that. What my pops was really giving me real fucking game. Even though he was saying it from a broken place, it didn't make that shit any less motherfucking more true. He was talking about, yo, you got to know her family. He was saying where her family came from, her narrative. He was basically telling me, and this is how I took that interpretation for myself, was like, you basically got to know their story. But in order to know their story on a deeper level for me, I had to know my story first. Or else I would only see the footnotes. This is the aspects of that affinity complex. You live in, a lot of times you want to live off the footnotes of the footnote becomes the footnote is your trauma, that traumatic experience. Mm-hmm. Yes, that's exactly what you're supposed. That's exact. All this shit down here worked for you. So if you came through Christianity, Islam, whatever it was, that was your basis. Until you understand your base and what your base was rooted in, and go back beyond. And this is where we get fucked up because of our traumas. And this is how we try to break away, but we keep an identity. You'll look at Christianity and you'll say beating, slavery, all this shit. Islam, beating, slavery, all this shit. And you'll only go to that point. They use it as a point of control and to control us and the da-da-da-da-da-da. But if it's plagiarized, if it's coming from another source that you wrote or information and they just put it together in that format or that context, that means I got to go out of my comfort zone. My comfort zone will have me looking at this doctrine is this, and this, and it kept us under control. As long as I keep that instilled in my mind, the same affinity complex, I'm always going to connect the things that are based on that. So I only can go as far as I'm based into that aspect of myself. You're only going to bring into your space based on what you have unhealed or what you have not dealt with. That's what controls your shadow. The longer you stay in a state of avoidance, the longer you keep trying to run away from this shit, the longer that you keep trying to run away from your work, everything's going to give you the sign that it's time for you to do your work. What are you going to do? You've always been in the right position. It's that necessity. Because it was a necessity. You can keep saying fuck Jesus and fuck Allah and fuck the white man and all that shit because it's there for necessity. The lower level of the affinity complex is always going to be the antagonist. It needs an antagonist. That's why you look at every movie that they ever show you, they always give you an antagonist. They always make themselves the protagonist. If you watched what's the movie? If you ever I noticed in a couple of movies that I've watched over the last couple of weeks that every time they say something about being impossible or I don't believe in that or some shit that can tap into the hidden spirit or the occult or the spiritual essence of ourselves or alchemy, they always have a black person say it. They always have a black person say it. They always have like a black man say it or a black woman say something shit's impossible. How do you think that react? How do you think that controls into your mind and it seeps in? The same impossible narrative that your parents brought into you based on a limitation, based on the lack of necessity, is how it imprints and it connects to your mind. That's how it's engineered to do that, based into you. That's why if I look at a movie, I can see it, as opposed to a motherfucker that can see it, but you still got to go deeper. Instead of you looking at it from, see, they always trying to make us enemies and all of this shit. See, they always trying to do this, and this. Mm-hmm. And now, I'm glad you brought that up. And now, even when they're saying the black man dies in the movie, now they're twisting it so the black person doesn't die, but they do something that brings a death to their identity. So in either way, you're looking for the death of their identity in some shape or form. So when you're looking at the black man dying in the movie, it was an angry black guy and all of that shit, and you getting upset just simply because the black man died. It's a part of your identity that needs to die. They killed off an aspect that needs to die off. And then you looking at the motherfucker that's soft shoeing and doing all, yeah, man, because the white man ain't that bad and all this shit. The nigga ain't bad nor good. The nigga only exists in the physical realm. That is material. What would you think what would the highest frequency of light that can be seen down here in the visible spectrum would be? That white light. That white light. That's all it would be. That's all you're looking at. Mm-hmm. That's all you're looking at when you're looking at it to that space. But if you sitting there if you still getting bothered by it, upset by it, they doing all these things, they letting out this and they doing all this and they got all this shit against us. You still got them on a higher space. You still looking at the physical and you still stuck. You're afraid to fall. Most of the things that we do based on these identities, you hold on to the identity because you're afraid to fall. You're afraid to become that villain. I became a whole fucking villain. I am the evil incarnate when it comes to my family. I'm evil incarnate. I am evil incarnate to my family because I'm no longer subjected to the physical aspects in the old narrative. So naturally, I'm going to become the other end of that spectrum to them. So naturally, in order for them to come to me through the other end of that spectrum, in order for them to come to me, they got to show aspects of themselves. But they've always been doing that. Everything in your space always has been showing you aspects of themselves. But the reason that you react to it is because it's a projection point of view. So this is when you're looking at the good and bad. This is how you get good and bad out of your damn head. You're looking at good and bad, good and bad, good and bad. But then you looking at, go back and look. If I look at my sisters and my brother and my twin sisters and my little sister, and we all came from the same exact space, for the most part, based in the same bases, but all of us are in different pathways. For my brother, he didn't move to Alabama with a white girl. To one of my eldest twin sister, she got 5 kids. To the youngest twin, she got 4 kids now. My little sister, she don't have any kids right now. But all of them are reflective points of trying to prove something to the original base. Uh-huh. Yeah. They'll put up something traumatic they'll put something traumatic up. You get all emotional over it because you remember something that happened to you. You mad at the vaccine. You've been getting vaccinated ever since you was little. You got all the vaccines when you were little. I got 2 shots when I was little. I didn't get all my shots. I remember that was like one of the first times I ever got sick when I was like 4 when I got my shots. I got sick as fuck. And my pops was like, that nigga ain't getting no more of them damn shots. So I didn't even get all my shots. So when I went through my cleansing, I went through my fast, and I went through all those aspects, a lot of that shit was purged out of my system. It's all in the aspects of it's the pageantry of the ritual of yourself. Everything that they doing is the pageantry or the necessity of keeping you in the illusion of yourself. As long as you have something outside of you based on necessity to keep you in survival, to keep you protecting, providing, nurturing, guidance, wisdom, and your twisted sense of wisdom, because you saying all niggas ain't shit because you ain't dealt with them father issues that you got. So now you done told your daughter that niggas ain't shit and niggas are stupid. They ain't aware of anything because you still looking at it as you still upset at your mom for how she met your dad, but you ain't dealt with that aspect. So now your mom was running around here hot in the ass and it had you and it met the nigga that's raised you. But now in that same space, now in your space, you got a homegirl, you got homeboys, you got a homegirl that belong to the fucking streets. Why is she there? Why does she bother you? Why does she take no accountability? It's deeper levels. That first layer is because you ain't taking accountability. What are you not taking accountability in? You keep yelling at your homegirl and your homeboys, man, you got to have something to do with what you doing with your life. Ask yourself that same question. What are you doing with your life? Are you simply just waiting for something to happen? Because remember, if you can see it and interact with it, it's because you on that frequency. It's the emotional paraphrasing. It ain't got nothing to do when motherfuckers say birds of a feather flock together, and motherfuckers like, but I ain't no fucking hoe, and I ain't no fucking hoe. My homegirl go out here and run up and with all these niggas and get pimped out all the fucking time. Don't even get paid for it. She get paid for it. It's a coping mechanism. Your job is the same coping mechanism. The same way you treat your job is the same way she treat them niggas. It's a coping mechanism. Never late, always on time. The same way that you. So now you got to look at it truthfully. You got to look at it honestly for what it is. This is what it meant by Baba Dick Gregory said, you can't take them glasses off. You can't force niggas to see. You're no longer going to see things as they seem. You're going to see things as they are. That hard aspect, you looking at your life and you like, why are the people that are around me? Like, I give you an example. Motherfuckers still will call me antisocial. I don't fuck with people. They right. You right. I don't fuck with people. It's not based on avoidance. It's based on I've already learned that lesson. I've mastered that lesson. I know that I've mastered that lesson because every time that I go to that space, it's a high sense of emotional. It's this whole prism effect of emotional paraphrasing going into that space that's trying to make me feed from me. Yeah, you got to accept that natural separation. Because even as you start leveling up and you start going through your work and you start doing this internal work, whether you want to do it or not, it's going to keep coming at you. You're going to start seeing your natural attributes of what the fuck you've always been. You've always been what you are now. You just have to shed all of the identities and all of the emotional conduits that kept you locked away from your purpose. This is why when you think about consciousness, think about them niggas that spent, them niggas still doing it. 15, 20 odd fucking years arguing back and forth, using emotional paraphrasing and emotional taglines and doing debates back and forth all the fucking time. Even think about looking at Bobby Hemmett, Brother Panic, Phil Valentine, and all of our master teachers. The reason that a lot of people connected to them so easily, just like they connected to the motherfuckers of the Afrocentric movement, the civil rights movement, it was based on survival or the necessity of an instinct that they did not yet learn about themselves. Most motherfuckers connected to Bobby Hemmett because it reminded them of a father figure that they never had. Same thing with Dick Gregory, same thing with Phil Valentine. That's why they will always go back and they'll just keep reciting news aspects. It's time for the next level. Every one of them have told you, nigga, I'm just pointing. Don't follow me. I don't need you to follow me. Learn, apply, and go to the next level. That next level is now assessing your shadow. That next level is now assessing the work that you need to do internally. You have all of the information. The more deep that you get within yourself and your internal, your shadow work, the more that shit starting to make more sense anyway. That's what they meant by that level of light that you in. You still sitting there, I'm going to wait until whatever they say. Meanwhile, this shit just keeps cycling back around. All is left is all what you really got left is you doing your shadow work. What you see now is most motherfuckers, the shadow, all you got left right here now is your shadow sitting right in front of you. That prismatic effect of you being able to shoot your light and live in all these other aspects of these identities, you noticing these identities are dissolving. You noticing that you notice that your friendships have dissolved, that relationship you tried to maintain is dissolved. It's all a part of the process. You weren't supposed to be you're learning to break away from attachment and come into true connection. You will not come into true connection until you've done your integration and dealt with your work. You will always find emotional attachment, still trying to maintain something of dignity and something of the physical necessity inside of the space. Whether on one end you want to be, okay, cool, I'm going to be in my, and this is the point of that process. After, it's like, you looking at niggas arguing back and forth and debating and shit. The reason that you was enthused by it and it made you laugh and you looked at it and you laughed and you listened and you sat there is because it reminded you of your uncles that were arguing around the barbecue. That's what it boils down to. Why were your uncles really arguing? What were they arguing about? You can hear it in their voice. I hear it in people's voices all the time, like when they haven't dealt with their mothers. That's the key of that. Yeah. But the more that you start to sit with yourself, the more that shit that start making sense. Like, I remember listening to Bobby Hemmett lectures when I started first listening to Bobby Hemmett lectures. And I was like, this shit is amazing. Like one of the first lectures I listened to was he was talking about for like the first 30 days, you just got to take in everything. Like, it don't matter how not true it is or whatever it is. You got to reprogram your whole subconscious. That was like one of the lectures that I actually took in and actually was listening to. So from that point, I was like, okay, cool. Let's see how deep I can go in the aspects of everything that I was in. What I noticed was the more that I opened myself up to that space, I bypassed that conspiracy theory shit. I would watch it, but I wouldn't get enthused by it and be like, yeah, they got this over here and they doing this to us. And I stopped. So when I was looking at it, my awareness or my scope was different. I wasn't looking at it from the space of the hurt. I was allowing myself just to sit there, absorb, see what it connected to. Because then dreams was wild as fuck. Psychedelics was even wilder. Everything that I was doing was in the aspect of what I needed to do. I wasn't getting attached to it. The only things that I could get attached to were the things that I did not heal yet. The only things you only going to be getting attached to are the things that you have not healed yet. Because everything based on connection is no limitation. Everything based on connection is outside of the realm of impossible. Everything based on connection is on a higher spectrum of frequency of your own thought process of you truly now thinking or using your logic and reason outside of necessity and based on authenticity. This is why everybody always says research everything. Because the same shit that I can say, the same shit that I've read and I can bring to the surface, you can have a whole different experience based on it. It's only when you get stuck trying to argue that that's the one way because you try to maintain an identity. You still trying to maintain that identity or the aspects of how your father put you through life, how your father raised you, how your stepfather, your father, your uncle, your mom's boyfriend raised you. So you still trying to buck against that. That's why you'll get there and get so excited to go in there with some new information. But now I heard about this to try to debunk them for what? What are you shutting them down for? Yeah, I shut down my pops. I told him about the da-da-da, about the Masons, and that nigga was a Mason for what the fuck did you really do? Maintain an identity? You still scorned? You still hurt? You still mad? You still upset? Mm-hmm. Exactly. I'm gonna show these niggas I read these 5 books. I'm gonna show these niggas I read these 6 books. Congratulations, you read a book. Congratulations. Great. You are 45, 35, 60 years old, standing in front of the same building that you've been standing in front of for like the last 20 years, having the same exact argument. Doing what? Using emotional paraphrasing because motherfuckers keep connecting to your ass in the intellectual aspect because you're smart, because you got some more, because all you're connecting to is the intelligence that your father had. That's the aspects of that axiom complex. You only connect to the lower or the higher aspects. When we're connecting to the lower aspects, there's always going to be that sense of burnout. Remember that high emotional cycle. So now me going back to these spaces where I know there's going to be an argument. I know there's going to be a fight. I know I know some shit's going to pop off over there. Why am I going? Because all that's going to be said is when they bring it to me, motherfuckers going to bring it to me anyway and say, hey, what are your thoughts on what should she do or what should he do about his relationship or what should they do about their relationship? Learn the aspects of themselves because that's all they're repressing. You try to stay in that space because you're steady repressing what you need to see inside of that space. You like it's cool. You like to stay in that space because it's that's that comfort zone. That's that comfort zone. You know exactly how to react into that space. You know it right now. If your homegirl get hit upside the head right now by her boyfriend, baby father, whoever the fuck this nigga is, you know the nigga too power to do whatever. He been doing the same shit for 15 fucking years with your homegirl, and you still trying to go over there and trying to save her. What are you saving her from? Why does it bother you? Because I guarantee you told the story at least 4 times. Girl, my dad went against my mom here like that all the time. So I know what I'm talking about. Yeah. You sitting there the entire using your trauma as the lube. Now you want to go to some. So what do I need to tell my friend about her boy? She need to work on herself. Yeah. That's the whole point. Is like when you just keep seeing the same shit recycled over and over again, that's the emotional paraphrasing. It brings you back to that state of nostalgia when you first got some information. But if you haven't applied to the information, you're like, man, this shit no longer even work anymore. Like, what is it? How am I applying it to myself? What am I doing with myself with this? It don't matter what I do, because I seem to always keep doing it. It don't matter what you're doing. If you're not stepping out of that comfort zone with yourself and stepping out to step into that ship, that emotional vehicle that's driving you into that space, you only gonna be riding around doing the same shit every fucking day. Only one. That's why I always say only one day matters. You're the only one that matters. Everything outside of you is based on a reflection of experience or observation. That accountability is going to be your authenticity. The more accountability you take, the more accountability I started taking for myself, the more authentic I became inside of my works. It was only when I started taking accountability for myself that I could actually become authentic in my works. When you were in that space of authenticity, you can do anything, because that's when you're inside of your genius. That's when you type into that intelligence, that simply wanting to do things. But when you're stuck in that realm of necessity, exactly, you stuck. Yeah, church has always been profitable, because motherfuckers, that's another ass. Let me go over there and go do this over here. If I sit over here, then this is gonna lead. That ain't leading you no closer to anything with yourself. That need based on necessity, that's gonna kill your ass every single time. If the only reason that you can say out of your mouth is the reason that you keep going around your family members that you know aren't getting any better, the reason you keep fucking with the same people that aren't doing any better, is because they're friends and their family and you know them and they were there for you at a certain point in time, you're stuck in necessity. You're not being authentic to yourself. You're not taking accountability for yourself. Because if you were taking accountability for yourself, because when you take accountability for yourself, what they start doing will irritate the shit out of you. Let's go back to another Bobby Hemmett lecture when he was talking about niggas out here just pissed me the fuck off. That's what that motherfucker was talking about. Exactly. Like, you got to take you in that comfort zone. Your friend was there for every relationship that went bad. Did you ever think for a second that maybe the reason that every one of your relationships had this bad catalyst or that the affinity aspect was because they were there and present? The reason that your relationships can't go to a certain point, or you can't seem to advance in your anything with yourself, in your internal work and dialogues with yourself, is because you have a anchor that you have given a name, that you've given a complex, you've given an entire identity that is an antagonist to everything that you stand for, based on you being a real bitch, based on you being a real nigga. But you got niggas around you that's always gossiping. You got chicks around you that's always gossiping. Those are your antagonists or your anchors that you have created in your comfort zone. You know exactly how to react to them. You know exactly what to do. You know when you're going to get mad, when you're going to get upset, when you're going to cool down, and when you're going to go back over there. Because you still trying to outdo your fucking mother. You still trying to outdo your fucking pops. You still trying to outdo whatever figure was the first figure in your life that actually told you some shit. You still trying to keep things together. My mom and pops met. My pops and mom. Exactly. Because this the crazy part. If you really fucked with having the people that you fucked with, you would never say half of the shit that you really would say. So this is another point in the layer of it. You're sitting there in that space only because out of the necessity, because you're afraid that they're going to say some shit about you or replace you. We talked about that 2 weeks ago in the aspects. Most of the people in your life, when you start shifting forward and there's a split, somebody else or another conduit is going to match that energy inside of that space. Someone that you probably met or you didn't like or whatever it may be, the case may be. I've had whole brotherhoods that I've destroyed that have been due to natural separation, that they've replaced me, the identity that I maintained in that space. They replaced it and put a carbon copy in that space. And I remember getting upset, like, oh, so y'all fucking with that nigga now? Or y'all fucking with, just like you sitting there mad at your girl fucking with another nigga. Yeah, you just keep creating these avatars. You mad because your girl then got with another dude, and that dude then is bringing why are you mad? You upset because just of the hint of your girl or your man got another person. Why are you upset? He didn't do that shit with me. It wasn't for you. He learned some lessons with you. Accept that aspect. What lessons did he learn? What did he learn while he was with you? What did you learn while you were with him? That's why y'all keep going back. You do all the cutting cord ceremonies you want, but you keep going back to the same type of person. You keep going back to the same type of person. Or you having dreams about this person 3-4 days out. I keep having the same dream about my ex. I don't even like that nigga no more. What did your ex what was the original catalyst or the underlining emotional paraphrase that brought you around your man? Brought you around him. That nigga was always in and out of jail. He was out there in them streets. He got that money. Tell me about your father. Was your father in some similar concept? Was your uncle in that similar concept or thought process? Tell me about your father. Tell me about your mother. Tell me about the incarceration. Who else had incarceration? The first incarcerations in your family. That's why you keep attracting these niggas that are always incarcerated. Because you ain't dealt with the first layer, you ain't dealt with what you're locked up in, and then you ain't dealt with the original model that you had in front of you. You want to avoid that and want to be better. You done been through 10 years worth of fucking relationships trying to prove to your mom that you can be the best mother or the best girlfriend or the best common law wife that you can be. All you got to do is accept that nigga shit because you still living off the good image of your father. But your sisters and your brothers had a whole different image of your father. And you battling back and forth with that. That's what you keep creating inside of your space. The different avenues of thought in order for you to deal with it. The alpha and that beta wave. The alpha wave in the lowest aspect, when they talk about the alpha male or the dominant or the top dog, is the ultimate point of necessity. The beta or the beta would be the root chakra aspect or the survival complex of the necessity. And then you want to look at the sigma complex. That's the aspects of the heart. Understands the higher, understands the lower, based in this physical necessity. But you can get stuck in that, I'm an independent. What you independent for? What is your independence wrapped around? What is at the core of your independence? The fact that you never want to struggle again. The fact that you don't trust niggas because ever since your father did what he did to you, or your uncle, whoever the masculine figure that was in your life at first did to you, you ain't learned it through that aspect. That's what you stuck in. You can't trust women as far as you can throw them because I can't trust women as far as I can throw them because I'm stuck on a complex of my mother being passive aggressive. So now I'm getting a bunch of passive aggressive females in my life. Why all these bitches passive aggressive and so naggy and all this shit and always saying, you did this, and this one time, and this. Why they keep bringing up all these points about myself? Why does it bother me? I had to understand layers to the levels. The first thing I had to knock off. Yep. Mm-hmm. Exactly. You sitting out. You, as long as you are stuck in the realm of the necessity, that means trying to maintain these old narratives based on your trauma. As long as you still, I got to do this and I got to do this first and I got to do this first, you're putting everything before yourself. Here goes the craziest part of putting everything before yourself. You'll put your family, you'll put your friends, you'll put everybody above yourself, before yourself. So now when you go into a relationship, the person that you went got to put you before everybody else. That's that inflection. They got to put you before everybody else. That means they got to remember, now go deeper into that aspect. You're trying to tell somebody to put you in all of your reflections before themselves. So now they're got to portray an identity based on that. I remember trying to portray this identity to maintain that narrative. So I accepted everything about the person so they didn't so they wouldn't bring up the stuff about me. Or when the things about me came to the surface, it didn't look that bad. And then you get stuck in this narrative with yourself that this is the affinity complex. So now you trying to save everybody. I remember I watched my pops when he came from Jersey and he came down here. I remember watching my pops try to save everybody in my mom's family. Everybody. He tried to save everybody in my mom's family. He taught them about business. He got them into aspects of business. He helped them build a whole office, a building for them to do it. He got them phone lines in there. He gave them all that stuff. He did all of this stuff inside of that space. My pop spent upwards to about 16 years. 16 years of my life trying to do that. And I remember my pops unplugged. He said, I ain't doing this shit no more. They don't want to learn. They don't want to listen. It was only based on the depth to himself. So then it made me really start thinking about my life and how I do things in certain spaces. What was I really doing in these relationships? What was I really doing inside of these friendships? Maintaining based on fucking necessity. You trying to maintain shit based on the level of necessity. Because there's no accountability in you being a real nigga. There's no accountability in you being a bad bitch. There's no accountability in you being an independent. Because you always gonna need something of an external standard to hold you or home you into that space. I'm independent because I went to college and I did this, and this. Okay, cool. How are those things applied to your life? How are those things and reflect to the aspects of you? Or are they simply based on necessity to maintain that identity? That becomes an aspect when you come into the spiritual ego, because the ego is the inner child, but that identity is what masks and keeps the ego or the inner child safe, or the image that you're trying to maintain based on the identity, based on those emotional paraphrases, based on these emotional taglines that you're trying to maintain inside of your space. And that shit gonna get really, really heavy. because you're supposed to be emptying yourself so you can reset. Light cannot assess the murky waters. So until you assess your shadows, all of the information, i.e. the light that you're trying to take in, it does not apply. It only can apply and attach itself to the identity. This is why you have motherfuckers so happy to be in the Afrocentric movement and to become Moors and to become Eastern Stars and to become fucking Power Rangers and Kemites and Hebrew Israelites and Nations of Islam. Nations of Islam, and I want to be part of the Ifa tribe, and I want to be an Orisha. You all, oh my God, that identity gotta be shed. And the only way to shed that identity Yep. You're supposed to get in, get what you need to get, and get out. You got to take out of this aspect, but we get scared of. But if I go in there and they treated me real nice, and they were a brotherhood and they were a family that I never had, break the attachment. All you're gonna do is start relating to them because you're seeing yourself inside of them. Break the attachment. The same way that you gotta break the attachments, the emotional attachments of that lower aspect, and you coming into the spiritual sense, same way you're going to break the attachments as you come into the higher senses. You getting stuck connected to these things because it gives you that feel good of, this is the family that I never had. This is the mom that I never had. That's the dad that I never had. What are you learning? It does you no good if you're not learning the aspects. You're becoming the mother. You're becoming the father. You're becoming the relative. I am my ancestors. You say it because it sounds cool. I am my ancestors. My ancestors is mad. My ancestors is mad at me. Your ancestors can't be fucking mad at you. They're energy. They're a concept of energy. They come through the flow point of the things that need to be worked on. So if my ancestors are upset with me, that means I got some emotional energy based in the fear complexes that I need to work on. So if I want to go sit there, I'm going to go look. I got my Gadet standing right across from me, and I'm thinking about obstacles. The first thing I got to remove is my perception of obstacles that are in my way based in necessity. That way I can get to the emotional format. Because without my emotional intelligence, I don't understand any of the byproducts or the physical manifestations that come into my space. I don't understand why I keep submitting to the same pattern. I don't understand why every time I want to go make some money and I make this money, and the reason when I lose the money and then I go get the money again is based on the same emotional paraphrase. I never want to go back to a point again to where my mom says, I ain't got no McDonald's. You got some McDonald's money. Hell yeah, mom, I got McDonald's money. I got Roof Chris money. I got Roof Chris money. I got Benny Hanna's money. The fuck does it matter? You've now defined where that money's about to go. So now you must define the emotions that are attached to that fucking money. So it goes all the way back to your emotional aspect. So now you still stuck in the same emotional paraphrase, and now you're trying to be this false ass top dog. It's your higher self saying your higher self does not exist in necessity. Your higher self does not exist in the realm of necessity. You can have, and this when I'm talking when we get into the aspects of luxury, you want to have the ability to go where you want to and all of that. That's a nice aspect, but you got to go into your authentic self first. Because until you're in your authentic self, you're always going to view that as the first necessity. That's going to be your ceiling. Therefore, if somebody tell you, yo, I did a 30-day, if I tell you I did a 30-day fast, the only thing you're going to look at me is like, I'm afraid you're going to get sick. I am going to get sick. I'm afraid that you're going to get really weak. I am going to get weak. I am going to get weak. I am going to get sick. I am going to throw up. I am going to go crazy. I am going to start saying random weird ass shit. I am. Yes. I accept everything that's about to come to me on this fucking path that I'm about to take because I know it's going to take me to my authentic self. And my authentic self is outside of fucking necessity. So if I must learn to go without some shit, now when I assess my shadows and my anchors and why my life was the way that it was, I can now own those aspects. I was already doing it. You looking at the struggle meals. You not eating. So the moment that you get money, what are you going to do? You're going to try to go buy everything that you never had before. And then what are you going to teach to your children? What are you going to teach to everybody around you? To try to go get everything that you never had before. Because you still stuck in necessity. You still need an antagonist when you stuck in necessity. The only reason that you can sit there and say that you're doing everything that you're doing, if it's only based on because of your struggle imprints, the oppressive imprints, your root chakra is still up here. You still sitting on your root chakra. You ain't take your fall to pick up your crown. So you can call yourself a king, call yourself a fucking queen, call yourself a god, a goddess, call yourself whatever the fuck you want. But until you take that dip down into that fucking darkness, you ain't doing nothing. You only on what you rooted in. Your root chakra up here. You afraid to become the villain and fall. So now you're afraid to the confidence in because this is how it now your arrogance in what you're projecting or your shyness in what you're projecting from your sacral chakra because it's up here. You're only speaking from the broken power structure that is now your solar plexus that is right here in your throat chakra. The path of the heart remains the same. The path of the heart always remains the same. That's why your heart, that's why they say, that's why it's your mind only repeats what the heart needs you to deal with. So the heart always repeats, the mind always repeats what the heart needs to deal with. So if I'm rooted in struggle and all these rudimentary bullshit aspects of humanity, that's what I'm rooted in. That means my crowning achievement will always be something in the physical. I'm always looking for something in the physical realm to bring me into my balance, into myself. So now I'm stuck in a predestination. So now I'm stuck in the highest points of the identity based in humanity. The highest point of my existence is to become a mother. The highest point of your existence, the highest point of your existence is to be a mother. The highest point. So now in every relationship that you get into, when you have an emotional paraphrasing state, because your vulnerability didn't start yet, because vulnerability requires comprehension. So you're communicating, so you're using emotional paraphrasing. What are you going to look for? The degrees, the rings, the degree, the ring, the babies, the car, the house. So you'll rent a whole life and make that your crowning achievement. So your whole crowning achievement was the house that you had. The whole crowning achievement was the relationship that you was in. That's why you feel worthless whenever they do something to you. They made me feel insecure and they made me jealous. They didn't make you anything. They simply highlighted what was already within inside of you. When you went and laid up with the motherfucker, the only thing that can be produced is what's already present. So you laid up with this, you lay up with a no good ass nigga or a no good ass bitch, and now you mad because you laid up with them. But they reminded you of your father. They reminded you of the good aspects of your father. They reminded you of the good aspects of your mother. That's why you was with them. And in reflection, you reminded them of their good parts. But now you're like, oh my God, I don't understand why it keeps happening to me over and over again. Because you're not falling. You're not falling. I tell people all the fucking time. I've told motherfuckers recently, like, yo, they gotta fall. Your homegirl, she gotta fall. Your homeboy, he gotta fall. They gotta fall from grace. The same way you gotta fall from grace. When they fall from grace, you're going to become the enemy of the fucking state. You're going to become their very fucking enemy. They're not going to like you anymore. But what they do not like is the fact that they cannot use the same emotional paraphrasing that had you coming around them in the first place. But they did tell me this. They told you about college 3 years ago. They told you about a job 4 years ago. They told you to leave that nigga 4 years ago and you holding on to that aspect. They did tell me to leave that nigga at one point in time. Okay. And did you leave them? So what is now their purpose? You're hoping that they see something that you don't see. My homegirls is forever. My bros is forever. No, the fuck they're not. None of that shit's fucking forever. But you stuck in that because it keeps your identity. Exactly. You're only trying to save yourself. You're trying to avoid saving yourself. Every time that you sit there and try to go save that friend or talk to that home and they're not listening and it's now bothering you, you're only trying to save yourself. You have to accept that you see yourself inside of your friend. You got to accept that you see yourself inside of your family member, your sister, your brother. You got to accept that you see yourself in them. That's the only way you can break away from the emotional drainage or the emotional connection, or you can allow this now the lower affinity complex to be broken away, because you got to see yourself in them. You got to see yourself in all of those relationships. I had to see myself in every one of my exes. It was only like 6, but still. I had to see myself in my exes before I could move forward. I had to see myself in. I had to be like, damn, I see myself in them. I see my avoidance issues. I see the shit I'm not dealing with. I see how I thought I saw the predestination. I still stuck on the predestination complex. I still see it. Because you thought you were going to keep doing the same thing you was doing when you got there. Everything changes. Remember, everything changes. No matter the macro or the miniature or the major, everything's going to change. That's why I use the example of, you ever notice in relationships when motherfuckers are together and they still remain friends until the other one finds somebody else, and now this motherfucker's the enemy of the state. Oh, that nigga ain't shit. Oh, that bitch ain't shit, because they found somebody else. They were still feeding that emotional aspect of yourself that you didn't learn about yourself yet. Let them be. Let them go away. Do what you need to do. You're always going to be put into the position to do what you need to do. Even if you have to become that enemy. Even if you got to... Because I refuse to myself to repeat. And when you say it to yourself, everything's going to come up based on your level of where you're going to be at. Where the level of where you're going to go to based on your authentic self. Because here's the thing. If I'm in a relationship and I'm trying to replace my mother, then naturally, if I'm in that relationship and I'm trying to replace my mother, or I'm trying to live out my father's predestination, or go against the grain of my father. Still trying to become better than my father and prove something to my father. What do you think I'm going to do naturally? What do you think you're going to do naturally in succession? That's where the kid comes from. The anchor. Another emotional anchor. That's where the child comes from. That's where the children come from. That's why if you had a string of relationships where you had multiple fucking kids with multiple baby fathers, what do you think those anchors were teaching you? They were anchoring you to your lesson. Now you anchor to your lesson. Fuck the 18-year category. Fuck, you anchor to them for life until you understand what the fuck you did it for. That's ultimately what it is. That's why when you get into that relationship that's all good and all dandy, and now you want to go into that relationship and you want to you're still in fix-it mode and still trying to prove things based on necessity, you treat everything as a necessity, down to the child being a necessity. Mm-hmm. Yes. If the immediate aspect for yourself is to always try to find the connection or bring yourself into that space, that addiction aspect, you be addicted to shit. It don't matter what it is, the addiction goes further out. You get stressed out. You need a point of interest to keep your ass in that space. That's what you use the kid for. That's what you use the kid. That's what some motherfuckers use the kid for. And you just repeating the same cycle of what your mom did. And then you repeating the same cycle of what your grandparents did, especially if your grandparents were in the South, where sharecropping, the more people that you had on the field, the more money, the more crops you could get. You only repeating the same generational aspect and bringing it into this current space. You learned through fear. Your whole life was based on survival. So now in your current state with your current kids, nieces, nephews, now I can see the example of fear based on survival. So when I look at my brother, I remember the last thing my brother told me back in like 2008, he was like, I'm going to do everything Pop said I couldn't do and try to do it better. So my brother took on this chick, 2 kids. They had another kid. No. The way that we've seen marriage is based, the way that marriage original basis, the marriage by its original basis it was based in the aspect of the casting based on the space where you were at. Remember, the marriage wasn't even a marriage, the consummation or the honeymoon or the sex, that was the bonding of the marriage. You weren't married until you had sex. Mm-hmm. You weren't married till you have sex. But when we take it to the higher aspects and we understand the sacred energy exchange, the reason that a lot of the shit that keep happening in your life happens in our lives is because you're still married to that the identity that you created within that space. That means that trauma bond you created some identities. You created identities in that space. So what identity did you create? You always creating some shit. So your homegirl that's running out there being a hoe and you trying to be the mother and the sisterhood to her, y'all just created the identity. So you got to think about every time you exchange your energy into any space, you're married to it. That urge that you feel in that space to consummate, you're always going to be in a state of consummation based on emotional attachment. So whether you're always going to go back to how y'all got together, how the marriage came, how that bond came into play anyway. So y'all niggas always argued about, if y'all relationship started on an argument, that means it's always going to go through a cycle to end on an argument. It's better to, the thing with that, the aspect, the identities that you create, another excellent point. The energy that the identity that you create, you're casting away. Similar to like when you created that whole identity of you were a superhero when you were little, or you had superpowers, or you created the monster under the bed and all of these aspects. Those are identities you created based on survival. I don't need an identity because I no longer need to survive. I'm accountable for everything that I do. I take responsibility for everything that I do. So why do I need the identity to protect me? I don't need to be protected by anything based on necessity, because I'm not going to be a protector. I don't need an antagonist to keep that going. Your antagonist is what keeps you going based in that realm of necessity. They life fucked up. Your life is a little bit better. Exactly. Now that makes you think about everything that you've ever created. When we start going to this level of understanding our aspects about the rhythm of creation, I talked about that in the aspects of amorality. I talked about it in the amorality lecture. You're not here for the prerequisite or the presets. The preset leaves you in comfort. The path of left resistance is going to be the path that I didn't need to be on. I needed the path of the resistance. I needed the path of the reflections. That's the path that you're going through now in your shadow work, when you go into the first integrations. There's going to be a lot of resistance on that path. There's going to be a lot of physical resistance. The path of least resistance is of the physical realm. It's once you graduate from the physical or the necessity, going into your authenticity. Now the path of less resistance is because you separated away from the physical. You're understanding that everything that I'm doing up here, everything that I'm doing up here is going to matriculate down here and fall into the places that it needs to fall into. You've been doing that shit unconsciously forever. That's why I always say the unseen creates your space in front of you. You sitting there mad because I need a friend. Why? Tell me why you need friends. Give me the reason that you need friends. Because because you're lonely. You need someone to build an identity for you. You need to protect that identity. That's the only reason that you need the friend, is to protect that identity that you got. Your tribe and your friends is two different aspects. Your soul tribe and the motherfuckers that you came down here with, that came down here with you through their own gateways and portals to come down here. Your tribe is totally different from your friends. Your tribe is going to test you and challenge you and put you in positions that you never even imagined. Your tribe is based on authenticity, not based in necessity. Your friends that you're trying to maintain, the relationships you're trying to maintain, they based on necessity. That's the definition of need not, want not. I need for nothing, want for nothing, worry for nothing, stress for nothing. Period. I remember telling myself that in the earlier stages, and every time I said I don't stress for anything, Guess what would come from the unseen? Something for me to stress about. Because I said I don't stress for nothing, that's where the accountability came into play. Why did I take on this? What did it mean? What was the why behind this? What was I trying to belong to? What is it anchored to? Because it only can follow the line down to the anchor. Your unseen is always going to follow down to the line of the anchor. You sitting here bungee jumping back and forth, up and down, to and fro, afraid to snap the line. You still afraid to die. Uh-huh. Yes. Yes. That's an excellent example. All R&B groups and rap groups break up at least once. Hell, if we look at Drew Hill only got 2 of the original members in it. So what you trying to hold on to? Then you got stuck when them motherfuckers talking about you only got one life to live and no new friends and all that bullshit. And they had Drake sing no new friends to y'all asses and shit. You're like, yeah, I don't need no new friends. I need my A1s and my day ones. Fuck my A1s and my day ones. If they're still on the old aspects or in the old paradigms or the old axioms of thought, why are they around me? I said I want the best, right? I said I want the best. I said I want to step into that new shit in myself, right? I said I wanted to upgrade, right? So the first thing that's always going to come up, the negative always comes up before the positive. The negative always comes up before the positive. So if every time you say you want to level up and you want to do better in your life, guess what's going to come up first? Every one of them friends that you thought was positive influences inside of your life, there were truly negative aspects that served the purpose. They no longer serve a purpose to you in necessity based in your authenticity. They're still negative. You can't make them positive. They're still fucking negative. They now you'll go to a point of repelling. Now you can actually dive down deep. Now you actually can sit there with yourself. They're not going to sit. I've said that shit before. They're not going to sit with themselves as long as you're still there. You can tell them everything. Because I'm 8. Because I'm little. I don't know any better. It take you back to everything. Like everything I'm thinking, like everything in the release of the aspect of like, I'm listening to everything that my parents ever said to me. Everything from my mom telling me all the fucking time, like, you don't go to school to make friends. And my father, you don't go to school to make friends. All that shit beating you in your fucking head. And you've been trying to fight against that ever since. Oh, I'm going to get me some friends. I'm going to show you I'm going to get some friends. I'm going to show you friends are a necessity to my life. I need them. Why you need them? Now you got to create a reason for needing them. They're only going to be based on your unseen. Because once you start dealing with it, once I started dealing with my internal shit, them motherfuckers irritated the fuck out of me. Once you start, even let's say go down to the aspect of you getting a job and you doing better in your life and they still talking the same old shit. They start irritating the shit out of you. Uh-huh. You got to step into that. You got to put your face against that. You got to put your face against that grindstone and allow it to peel that shit off. You afraid to be ugly. You afraid to look. You afraid to disfigure that identity. Yeah, and that's the thing. They weren't exposed. They weren't supposed to give it to you in a way, because if they gave it, think about it like this. If your parents gave you some shit on some intelligent shit and they have given you intelligent game, they gave you some intelligent game, you be comfortable. Hell, that's where you was in comfort. Now you spend half of your, because you had to learn your emotional intelligence. That alpha mind complex. You wanted to be the top. You wanted to be the top friend. You wanted to be the top birth friend. You wanted to have be in the. But in order for you to be on the top, motherfuckers had to be at the bottom somewhere based in the necessity complex. Your authenticity puts you in every position that you need to be in. Me being authentic with myself puts me in every position that I need to be in. If I'm not in that position, that means I'm not my authentic self, or it doesn't correspond with my authentic self. If it triggers something in me, that means I need to deal with that aspect in order to become more of my authentic self. So now you look at everything you try to be included in, and you create an identity to be included there. Yeah. In school, you didn't have no friends in fucking school. Uh-huh. They're naturally gonna go against it. And exactly that's yes. I refuse to try to compare that's when you start hearing the projections on codependency. That's a lot of times you hear motherfuckers talk about you make me feel small or how. Ask them how. Instead of you getting upset and why it bothers you, this is a shadow, this is an exercise, ask them why. Listen to what they say. More importantly, look at their body language. As a therapist, I look at your body language whenever we're doing everything that we do through a video call or if it's live or whatever. I'm watching your body language because that's going to guide me into the next sentence I'm going to use, what I'm going to say. The spirit's going to help me. My spirit team, everything's going to help me, lead me to what we got to say next. I'm only a vessel. The more empty that I am when I go into the space, the better that it's going to be. I'm being guided by you. I'm being guided by you. What you're seeing, what we're understanding is turning everything upside down. That's where your true perception lies. You're seeing that everything was crowned upside down. You sat there, everything that you were rooted in was up here. So after you have that conversation and we turning you this way so you actually can take the dive, you diving down. You ain't going up first. You got to go down first. You got to go through that shit. That's why you got to assess those roots. The Afrocentric movement, the Civil Rights movement, all of these emotional paraphrases, they kept you in that state so you didn't have to change. They kept you with your identity. They gave you a reason to be mad. They gave you a reason to be a real nigga. They gave you a reason to be a gangster. They gave you a reason to be all of these things. Mm-hmm. Places of employment are the same things as your fucking school. If you ever you think about your place of employment, it ain't nothing but a big ass fucking high school. Uh-huh. Exactly. You got to change that fucking narrative. You got to stop looking like a lot of the things you still trying to look. That's a big reflection for shadow work for anybody. Like the proudness that you never got from your parents, or the love you never got from your mother, the love you never got from your father. You sitting there and you trying to get that from everybody else because you still searching from that from your relationship. So now you're looking for that false sense of you're still constantly in seek of this false sense of acceptance from the relationship. So now when the relationship hits that point, that pivotal point to where it's time to invest in what you're learning in, because every relationship that you come into starts with experience and ends with observation. If I did not learn from the experience, I can't tap into the observations. That means I can't see what I need to observe. So now I got to go back to my experiences. So now the next relationship that I go into, some equivalent experiences, and some new observations. That's why when you look at old buddy, the nigga that you was with, he didn't do half of the shit that you wanted him to do, but he go get with a chick, and all of a sudden this nigga like got all the bags and taking care of himself, eating healthy and all of those aspects because the environment was different. The environment was not based on survival. You had an environment, you only learn from environments based on survival. So now when you go into that space, you can tell, and I talked about it, I actually had a session earlier today. You can tell when somebody is truly in the true love aptitude, understands what loving thyself is. Because it only comes out one way. What you hear is based on the cadences of what you don't understand of yourself yet. So if I sit here and I went for a whole entire 2 months telling you about saying the aspects about self, it's time to get selfish. Went for an entire 6 months, first 6 months of this year, 5 months, 2 months, talking about the aspect of you becoming selfish. Why are you afraid to be selfish? Selfish is to become what? To become authentic. In me becoming selfish, I become authentic. In me being selfless in the human narrative is depending upon the necessity of other bodies around me creating or maintaining the projection of my image. So if I kept running around being selfless to motherfuckers, you're basically a crutch in the human aspect. The longer that you are selfless, you are a crutch. You are an enabler. They're never going to learn anything. I'm going to read that out loud. Imagine if the first words out of your mouth to a new acquaintance was, "Hi, I'm Lucifer. I can't do shit for you. Would you like to have coffee? How many would you?" Yeah. That is the someone told me today when I was looking for an assistant, wish you the best. Wish you the best. I told them, no, I don't need that. I need help. What did you need help with? Better yet, why did that? The question would be for yourself is like, why did that stick to you? What place did it take you back to? Those become the questions when you're asking that aspect. Because in that same narrative, I'm going to keep building. In the same narrative of that aspect, when you go through a whole entire time in your space in the same clarity or the same point of you going through, that means they didn't know either. That means they didn't know either. If someone says, "I wish you the best," that lets me know that they don't know what to do either. That means I have two choices. Either let me go try to find this out or go seek somewhere until I need to get to that space. Everything works for you. When we go into this space of this, I want this, or I need this, or whatever, how I'm trying to acquire things in my space, or how I'm trying to bring things into that space for myself. It's always going to lead me to deeper back to me of what I need to do next. I remember there was points in time where I really was stuck in that. For me, I was stuck in that independent narrative. Like, you can tell me shit. I felt powerless without money. I felt powerless that I couldn't provide. I couldn't do some of these things to maintain this alpha wave mentality, but was rather I was in that beta wave, the beta wave mentality or my survival. And I was always going back to the narratives of myself like, yo, like, why my mom didn't help me? Why my pops didn't do this? Why this didn't happen? And they're sitting there with it. The longer that you sit with it, there's a key to sitting with these types of aspects. You're not sitting with them to allow them to fester. You're sitting with them to allow yourself to reflect. What did you learn inside of that space? What did you learn from your first no? How have you used your first no to get to this point? How have you used the first yes that you heard to get to this point? How did you use that traumatic experience, all these experiences to get to a certain point with yourself? How did you use them? What was the purpose? How did you shift yourself into where you at now? Your new self, your thought process. What the hell is all this? Oh, okay. And clearing everything. I said clear, not what the hell is that? Ooh, child. Why did Fat Joe come on my live? What are we talking? Yeah. Assessing the affinity complex is going to be that major key to your work. The affinity complex is composed of the lower aspects or connections to the physical or the less attractive would be the highest points of attraction in the humanity aspect, and then going into the higher complexes that are based on you actually manifesting, you're setting your intentions, you working with your magic, you understanding your emotions, your emotional intelligences. So now when you're looking at relationships, it's time to look at these relationships a lot different. Instead of looking at them as the aspect as a victim, because a lot of times I looked at my relationships, I looked at myself as a victim, even when I was the victimizer. You got to be really, really honest with yourself. To me, a wish is avoidance. Why wish when I can actually do something? Exactly. A wish, using the wish aspect based on rather than setting the intention, that's basically that's one of the things that we've been trained. That's one of the things that you came into doing. You sat there in your bed when you were little and you listened to an argument, and you sat there in your bed and your mom said you can't have no cookies, and you were like, I wish that I can get out of here. So now you embedded this wish into your mind or your intention, and you built everything else formulated around that one wish. Some of y'all are still wishing for that one cookie that you never could have when you went to bedtime. Some simple shit. But you created it into something totally fucking different because you didn't understand all of the parameters or the emotional aspects that went into that no. That's why I always say you got to assess your space. What space are you in? Your space is your initial opportunity. Your space is your initial opportunity of all of your energy and what you're doing with yourself. So if my space is not in order, if my initial space is not in order, that means I need to address my initial space. Or I will be in a state of avoidance from my initial space. And the only way that I can come back into my space is the only way, a lot of times, based in this realm of necessity. I love building on this necessity aspect. Listen to your conversations that you have outside of your initial space, that relationship, the job, wherever you at, before you come to your initial space, the space where you at, your home base, your serenity, your space. I can guarantee that you will try to create inside of your space. Yeah, J-Lo never gives up. In your initial space, what you'll start noticing is, if in your initial space, it's like, use an example. You in a relationship that you have never been in before, and that shit was great. They're emotionally available. They have emotional intelligence. They can shut your ass down when your ass try to argue in the most mature of manners. You ain't used to that. You start going into this space long enough, you start seeing, all you start seeing is all you're seeing in the space is your projections or your filters through the wounds. So now the only way that you're taking them in, let's say you got a dude in your life, and you ain't dealt with these aspects of these internal masculine wounds you ain't dealt with. Every time you look at this person, they tell you something, you can tell them that they right all the time. They don't respond the way other niggas said that shit to you. Let me use an example. I remember my mom would always buck against my pops in front of us and say some shit like, nah, that ain't this, da-da-da. She would never, since she did not learn humility within herself, and she was maintaining this identity of the wounds that she had before that point, she never could tell my pops when he was right. She never could tell him when he was right. What that came out to us was, when we was in spaces, when I'm in relationships, I'm fighting to be right, even when I was wrong. I was fighting to be right, even when I was wrong. So now I'm looking at I go back, look at the relationships, and I was trying to make myself right or trying to make it fit to stay within that space, not understanding that that's how the connection was in that space. So of course it worked. Of course Shorty would not say nothing about this, or if I did some shit or if I said some things. Of course she ain't gonna say shit. She was a reflection of my mother, passive aggressive as fuck. So I fed off of that passive aggressiveness, so I could maintain the identity unconsciously of my pops. Switch that shit to the other side. Now I'm in spaces where I'm passive aggressive. And if you understand true passive aggressiveness, you will sound so condescending. That's the example of nagging, condescending thought processes, bringing up shit from like, you ain't letting go of shit. You never learned to let go. You never needed to let go. So you still holding on to the old, and it goes even further back because you're still holding on to the emotional paraphrase, the old aspects of affinities that had you build that space. As long as these affinities are in play, you can remain in that same identity, behave the same way, act the same way. Whether you acting out, you're avoiding conversations, you're avoiding the things that you need to deal with. But guess what's going to happen? As long as you're inside of that space, everything's going to focus on that focal point because you have not learned to change your perception. Remember, every perception is a different doorway. So when you change your perception, it's a different doorway. When I change my perspective, it's a different path. The path changes. When I change my perception, the path changes. The doorway changes. It's not going to be the same doorway because I needed to accept the different aspect of myself. This is all becoming This is all coming into the authentic authority with yourself. Peace, peace, peace. This is all coming into the authentic authority with yourself. As long as you're stuck within that realm of necessity, I need to do this, and I need to do this, and I need to do this. As long as you keep putting all that shit before you, as long as you keep putting the illusions before you, you never learn how to reflect. You only learn how to project. When we're stuck in this space of necessity, it's based on projection. It's never based in reflection. That's why when somebody checks your ass or says some shit to you, even if they say it in a through the filter of a traumatic response, even if they say it through a filter of a traumatic response, that means they say you ain't shit and your mom's a bitch. And they say some shit to you in that narrative. You got to understand why it's bothering you. Or else you're only going to project from my mom. Your inner child going to come out and be like, my mother did the best that she could. My pops left. And I'm just simply trying to be what my mother made me to be. Instead of you taking it to that reflection. There's a reason behind that. That motherfucker hurt. They hit you with a low blow. They hit you with that shot. They wanted to make you feel some type of way because that's how they emotionally stay connected to you. Because as long as I'm stuck in necessity mode and as long as I'm stuck in the necessity, this emotional attachment can stay together. That means they can get mad, get upset. I meet them with conflict or they walk away or whatever. We come back together. I'm sorry, I was upset. I'm stressed out because of work. Still projecting. It's because of work. It's because of my mom. It's because of this. It's because they did this to me at work and they did this to me. They still projecting. We made that shit normal to project and not reflect. That's the necessity. That's being stuck in the lower level of the affinity complex. You only learned how to project. You only learn how to project through your fear. You only learn how to project through your trauma. So when it came to a space where you were able to start reflecting and understanding my traumatic responses and why I was reacting to things based on the traumatic response, when it came time to the reflection, that shit got really, really heavy. Yes, shadow work is your process. You around because that's the traumatic, exactly. That's the traumatic response. You keep people around you that keep your emotions at a high level because you are because if that shit drop, remember if that shit drop and you shit drop from grace, you got to pull that shit back up. It's your responsibility to pull that shit back up. But that identity that you created based on those necessities, that identity that you created based on those necessities keeps you at that steady point of that charge. So now you stay in that space, you stay in charge. So now as long as your homegirl or her man is always arguing, and you can go over there and be like, yo, man, and you sit beside your homeboy, you sit beside your homegirl. The only thing you can tell them is stories of your own damn life. My mom and dad used to argue like that shit all the time. Yeah, my mom and dad used to argue. I'm just trying to break that cycle. You got to break that shit inside of yourself. You is not breaking that cycle with that nigga. You is not breaking that cycle with that bitch. I'm sorry. Not sorry. They are what they are based on what they've been through. You connected to them based on the emotional paraphrasing that brought y'all into that space. Both of y'all motherfuckers are repressing some shit. Both of you motherfuckers ain't dealing with shit. It comes out every time that y'all argue. Why can't we just let this shit die? Why can't we just leave it alone? Every time it's something else and it's something, you ain't dealing with it. That's why it keep coming up. You ain't dealing with it. That's why you stuck in them relationships. Yes. That's the true meaning behind that birds of a feather flock together. It's based on the emotional aspect, the emotional intelligence. You steady want to stay in a space where you want to keep avoiding your trauma. So you have all of these, I've talked about that before. You created all of these aspects to avoid that trauma, to avoid that event, to avoid dealing with your mother wound. So you want to become the best mother ever. You want to become the best mother ever to prove to your mom, one, that you can be the best parent ever, and then you can be the best lover and the best lover ever. So now what do you think you're gonna bring into your space based on to the unseen? And the unseen get even deeper if you're not integrating with those shadows. So now you living in your mother's shadow. So now you living in your mother's shadow. You upset with your mom, you mad with your mom. That's one of the first shadows that you're gonna have to integrate with. Or the same thing with your father. First shadow you're gonna have to integrate with. It's not one shadow, it's multiple anchors or multiple tethers that connect to the overall body that is your shadow self. Broken down and synthesized so you can digest it. That necessity to keep you from being able to digest that shit. That authenticity helps you out. The more that you are taking, the more accountability that you take. Mm-hmm. And that's going to be her battle. And that's going to be her battle. For you in that aspect of her trying to be the better mother than you, the things that she's trying to be better than you in, the thing that she's trying to be better at than you, those things are the things that come to the surface for you to learn the aspects about yourself. That's her purpose. That's the first layer of her purpose. 1 second. That's the aspects of that purpose. Let's go into the aspects that we're gonna twist, we're gonna take it to a different level. I remember with my my pops. I'm gonna go back to that part. My pops said you're doing a lot of the things. It's crazy that I can see a lot of the things that you're doing that I haven't done, or the things that I've done and going down the same path. I don't want you to repeat a lot of things. And I remember going down the path, and I remember I was doing my meditation, and I got to a point in my life where my first ever fiance, I was like 19. I remember she was pregnant. We didn't named the child we didn't name the child. Alexia J was going to be her name and all that good shit. I remember she went to go see her family for Christmas in Japan. Her parents were her dad was in the military. He was stationed in Japan. And I remember I went back home and visited my parents. I remember when she told me over the phone, she was like, yeah, she had a miscarriage. I already had doubts that she wasn't really pregnant and all that shit. I already had all them doubts in my mind. I was like, I remember saying to myself, I don't want to have a kid with this bitch. After everything that happened in the aspects of relationship, I didn't want to have a kid with the bitch. That shit fucked my whole head up because I wasn't even really thinking about it, because I was holding on to this animosity towards her And that energy was created into that space. But then it took me back to that conversation with that was one of the first things that came up when my pops had me that conversation. And then later on when I was going into my shadow work, I was like, that's not my purpose. Because if I did go down that path, or if that happened, it would be an entirely different path of perception. So that was a part of my humanity that I had to become comfortable with. This shit happened again. The feelings were different, went through the whole damn process, and then after that, went forward. You have to understand that you're going to do shit that is going to be a disgrace to humanity. It's going to cause a whole bunch of triggers. It's going to fuck up a bunch of shit that is based in the predestination. That's the point of you removing yourself from necessity. That means you're no longer looking at yourself through the scope of the necessity. You're changing yourself from this damn scope. You're changing that range. You have to think deeper. You got to go farther. You must go higher. You can't keep thinking in this same narrative of the lower aspects of yourself, trying to maintain the identity, because all you do down here is maintain an identity. That's all you can do down here is maintain an identity, mimic an identity, replicate an identity while you're down. That's all you do while you're down here. When your mindset is stuck down here, remember we talked about that aspect of your instincts based on survival. So everything above you based on your intuition is to challenge you to shift your instincts up to this level outside of survival. My instinct is peace. My instinct is love. My instinct is in the frequency of love, peace. So now when things come up to the surface of my peace, now I see it. Now I can see it and deal with it. Instead of me trying to deal with it in that space. You can't deal with it down here. You can't deal with the shit that is based on you trying to achieve peace in a space of survival. You got to take your mindset out of survival mode. That's that dip down to pick up your crown and come back up. That's that Lazarus story. That's the Lazarus story. That's the Lazarus story in the scriptures. You're taking yourself out of that position. You're removing yourself from the false perception or the false identity of your whole existence. This is what I talked about the week before, when I was talking about the aspects of shedding that reptilian brain or shedding that false mind. And the week before, when we were talking about the aspects of you got to get to a point to where you don't believe in shit. You got to get to a point where you don't trust shit. You got to get to a point to where you don't trust or believe in anything. That's the only way you can step out of necessity. Because when I used to believe that 6 years ago, when I believed that I was going to be a restaurant manager and all that good shit, that predestination, much gratitude. When I was stuck in that space thinking I was going to be a restaurant manager, my predestination complex was still there. Your predestination has always been there. You have the unconscious predestination, then you have your conscious predestination. Your conscious predestination, that's your true purpose. That's in the authenticity of yourself. That's you stepping into yourself. Everything based in the unconscious aspect or your unseen gives you the predestination based on necessity. You need to be a good father. You need to be a good boyfriend. You need to be a good girlfriend. You need to be a good mother. You need to be a good sister. You need to be a good uncle, aunt, whatever it may be. You don't need to be none of that shit. That's all based in necessity. Because in order to be good, you got to be the protagonist to whatever antagonist that they're avoiding. So you got to connect to their antagonist. Therefore, y'all anchors got to, now y'all tethers got to link so y'all can keep doing the same shit, so you can be that good aspect. Enabling them, or enabling, in enabling them, you enable yourself. Yes, that pandemic. That shit was designed by you. You've always been a virus. You instilling information into yourself. It's so much. You were already lazy. The COVID didn't make you lazy. You were already lazy. The COVID didn't make it harder for you to the COVID didn't make it hard for you to survive and to thrive. It forced you so you couldn't avoid your shit anymore. You got used to going out and avoiding and coping and using the coping mechanism with your wounds. You was already lazy. You was already avoiding shit because guess what? Now that everything opened back up, motherfuckers still doing the same exact damn shit. You went back to doing the same damn thing. You went and found new avoidances. You went and found new reasons to stay within that identity of yourself because you're still trying to maintain the identity that if I do this one thing over here, I'm good and I'm set. I ain't got to do no work. You still proving that you lazy as shit. That's what the addiction did to you. So while you were sitting there out there, see, they exposing everybody. This pandemic exposing all this shit. They exposing the pedophilia. Nigga, what did it expose about you? Sis, what did it expose about you? What did it expose about you? It exposed that you was lazy. It exposed that you really weren't doing anything with your life beforehand. Because through the wave of the pandemic, when I discovered TikTok, there's like over 870 some odd ways in counting because I'm still looking at them. And to make money from, you take all of those pictures of scenery and your beach vacations and all that shit, do all those edits. There's a whole websites dedicated to 25 cents a photo. You can take your photo. You can take that photo. I'm gonna read that. You can take that photo. You can make a whole NTF. That's digital artwork, and then trade your shit up and down and get commission off the shit. But if you haven't been doing your base work yet, how you gonna see that? Remember, you only see based on your level of your frequency of where you at. So if all you understand, if you were based in struggle, then all you ever going to see is ways to struggle. And all you're going to use is the coping mechanisms to help you deal with your struggle. Mm-hmm. And yeah, this shit ain't going to feed you the way that you wanted to be fed. This shit ain't gonna feed you the way that you thought you wanted to get your life based on that renter, that I'm gonna rent my life complex. That shit ain't gonna work no more. You can't rent. This is literally about ownership in the LLC mentality. Literally about the LLC mentality, the ownership mentality. Yes. You down here trying to maintain a fucking virus? You are the virus. Just you coming, think about when Bobby said, just you coming online change some shit around. Just bringing that shit to the surface change narratives. So imagine you keep taking that shit deeper into yourself and applying it. Really doing your shadow work and stop blaming everybody else for your shit. You still upset. Like I've said that shit before. There's no reason for me to be upset. There's no reason for me to be mad. There's no reason for me to feel any type of way. There's no reason for it. I cannot logically or analytically in my mind be upset. I can't. It just don't happen. It don't. There's nothing from it to pull from. I'm no longer rooted up here. My root is now down here in my level of my peace. I'm now grounded in peace. I can't be like, oh my God, but what about the babies in China? And what about the babies in Africa? What about the babies in Africa that keep getting traded and the slave trade that's still going on over there? The fuck can I do? Except for show the reflective points. You still affected by slavery because you still a slave to your emotions. Checkmate. But nah, man, I'm not a slave to my emotions. You speaking through emotion right now, sir, ma'am. But what about what they did to the niggas up in Texas and all the shootings and all the people that you speaking through your emotions? I don't move through my emotions. My thoughts are in the higher aspect. So now my emotions are in that balance. So now I can become that doesn't mean that I'm not aware of what's going on. It doesn't mean that you do not become aware of what's going on. You now can look at it. Yes. And that means when I'm looking at these things that's going on, I can now assess and learn the deeper aspects of myself. I only can react to. And that's deep down. It's not based in avoidance. That's deep in me understanding that now I'm the observer. Let me look at this situation. Why is that coming up? What is it taking me away from? This that new moon flow energy right now. Yeah, that awareness is going to make you tighten up. If anything, your awareness is going to make you tighten up more into your authentic self. So you can, oh shit. They keep doing that over there to the human niggas. The niggas that still stuck in their emotions. I've said that shit before. I ain't been removed. The only two times that I got restrictions on Facebook was based in two groups that were, it was Axiom for Black Africans and some other comedic science group. Only two groups. Two times. The way I got restrictions to where I couldn't make posts and they shut down my shit to where I couldn't use my page from them two fucking groups. What did it teach me in them 10 days? That I'm my own emotional enemy. I ain't posted in them groups since. The same groups that I was looking at, they still talking about the same aspects. They still talking about shit I talked about 6-7 years ago. About 4, they talking about shit I did, like shit that I posted 6 or 7 years ago, or shit that I talked about 4 or 5 years ago. They still stuck in that same cycle. If I react emotionally, I get shit emotionally. When I'm responding to things in a logical manner and I'm analyzing and I'm taking acceptance and accountability for myself, the entire position of all the particles are going to change. That space is no longer open for me. One of the things I despise is when Amber Alert sends an emergency alert to my phone. I can't do anything about what happened to somebody's child who is now with their mommy or daddy. Oh my God. Funniest thing about that, I watched a TikTok video and it was like this little black kid. He was like, they get rid of me after this. They don't get rid of me after this. And he was like, the Amber Alert is sent to the cell phones of everybody in that space. Wouldn't a kidnapper, if they have a cell phone, get the same Amber Alert? Like, really think about that. If an Amber Alert hits your cell phone and I'm the nigga that stole the kid and I have a cell phone, wouldn't that give me, oh shit, nigga, they looking for me. They said the car. They said my car. They said what I was wearing. Oh shit. Let me slide over here to the Walmart real quick and get me a new outfit and go get this child a new outfit and let me go get another car. Program it to your trauma. That event. You think that Amber Alert triggers something in your aspect about your lost innocence. You keep looking at the pedophiles on TV, it's triggering something about your lost innocence. That's what it's connecting to. Either the lower or the higher, that higher affinity aspect. So if it's connected to your lower affinity aspect, that's why they hit you with it could be your daughter, it could be your son, it could be your brother, it could have been your dad, it could have been your uncle. And then you'll sit there and you'll play it off in your mind, but like, man, fuck my uncle, man. It can't be my dad. My dad in jail. My dad locked up. Okay. It brought it up for a reason. Deal with it. You got to deal with it. Don't step over it because it happened and it has something to do with you or you would have not been triggered by it. That's how mind control works. Mind control works based on you reacting to it. It don't matter what the result is. Simply by you reacting to it, it worked. That's how you know you still under mind control. You don't know you're under mind control until the shit done anyway. That right there is it. Because the Powerball is red. The Powerball is red. Root chakra. You still rooted in survival. That's why you'll sit there with that damn root. That's why you'll sit there and you'll look for that Powerball to drop every time because it's going to change your life. It's going to change your current survival situation. That it don't happen. Now you mad. All these complexes tap into you. All these complexes going to tap into you. You playing the aspects of the lottery with your life is the example of you playing the lottery with your life. The way that I tell my clients all the time, the way that you wake up is going to be the most important point of your day. How do you wake up? What do you do when you wake up? Do you spend the time trying to assess and put together your identity, or do you actually take the time to assess yourself? The first moments of your day should be about assessing yourself. How do you start your day? What do you start your day off with? What do you need to reset? Down to eating breakfast all the fucking time. Simple math of breakfast means to break your fast. But if you went to bed full, that means when you wake up, what you want to go do? Refill yourself. If I go to bed empty, that means I can now assess my emptiness. That's the most simplest, complex of shit. I don't eat before 12 o'clock. The only time that I ate before 12 was this week, was during this camping trip that I was on. Only time that I ate before 12. I ate at 9 and 10. And by Thursday, My body, my Thursday, I already said Thursday's the last day of the trip, about to come back. On Thursday, my stomach was in shambles. It was like, all right, cool. Lucifer, you had fun. It's time to allow everything to fall out. I took like 6 or 7 shits on Thursday. No, I took like 6 or 7 shits on Wednesday. Peeing all type, everything was just spelling out of my body because it was no longer, because my body is now in tune to when it's time to come back in the space that I need to come back into. Yeah. Accidents, all of this shit is based into you. Why do you think that it keeps coming up? How do you respond to it? That's always going to be your key. You can react and be mad. On the way back, no. Yeah. On the way back, there was no, not on the way back. Going somewhere. We were coming back, came back from the aquarium. We went to the aquarium. Coming back, there was a wreck. Coming back, there was a wreck. Wreck was about 3 minutes long. I'm sitting there like, all right, cool. Everything that I would usually react to, be upset, I just turn the music up, sitting there chilling. We looking around like, yeah, everything good. Even when I was trying to get over, there was this white man in a truck, big ass Ram. I'm like, I'm about to try to pull over. This motherfucker that don't even look. I could have got mad. I'm like, why the fuck you mad for? Nigga, I just get in behind the next motherfucker. Like, I'm not. Everything that was everything that would have been there about 5 or 6 years ago that would have made me upset. Didn't make me upset. Everything that was supposed to make me upset and make me feel some type of way didn't make me upset. Even the things that irritated me slightly were moments of learning experiences. Learning to assess and to see where I was disciplined at. Not stepping off of my square. That's what you're doing. Everything's now, as you shift out of the physical necessity and you're in your authentic self and you sit in your authentic seat. This is what it means when you want to say that you're a God. You can call yourself a God all day. I love it. Go ahead and call yourself a God all day. But you're going to take the test on of as a God. You ain't going to take the test on based on humanity. You said you was a God. What are you a God of? You're a God of sexual trauma. You're a goddess of sexual trauma. That's what the fuck you are. You are a queen of sexual trauma. You are a king of trauma. Yes, you are. That's all you're telling your higher self. All right, cool. You a king, but you brought it to the space. You got to work on, those are the tests. So now you got to go through this whole entire aspect. You're going to be extra dramatic for what? See, they're trying to stop us from being kings, even though we the original. See how you contradict yourself? You the original. How the fuck they going to stop you from being something? They're like you sitting there saying you accepted that you was a slave. They made us slaves. Nigga, they didn't make you no goddamn slave. Because them niggas was scientists and alchemists and high esteemed aspects. But they had you stuck in the emotional context. That was the whole reason they gave you the entire series of roots. Goodbye Uncle Tom and Nat Turner, and gave you the dream of Harriet Tubman being on a $20 bill. And the same reason you upset, it all goes into the same complex of why you mad because white girls got asses. You mad because a white girl got an ass. We can't have anything. You mad because niggas, these motherfuckers got dreads. The fuck you mad at them for? They're your fucking kids. You mad at them for? They're only going to repeat what you're doing. They're only going to show you what you don't need to be attached to. You mad because white people got locks. You mad because they got locks. And they should have never be as brilliant as mine. I ain't got twisted up in 3 fucking months, and my shit still look legit. My shit still luxurious and wavy. Fuck, what am I mad for? You mad because the white girl got ass. It's showing you that you shouldn't be attached to the physical aspect. The thing that they hide in, they keep us in a high-ass manner, and everything that they do, you getting your answer every fucking time. They going to go do whatever they need to do to go get an ass because it's an emotional attachment. So if your man look at a white girl with an ass and you upset, see, that's what y'all niggas always doing. Y'all niggas always looking at them fucking white girls in secret. It's the physical aspect. The motherfucker has physical urges. The nigga has not dealt with his physical urges. You getting upset by it means you ain't dealt with your physical urges either. That's what you depended on, and now you ain't got it. Now that something else is showing you, it's showing you how authentic your ass really is. It. Just to keep you locked into that emotional aspect with yourself. Exactly. You upset. I can care less. I can care the fuck less about some and because all it's doing is exposing me. I can yay. Congratulations, Becky. Good job. You spent the extra $5,000 to make sure everything's shaped up just right. Good job for you. But I refuse to sit there and be like, that's like me looking at Dr. Umar Johnson in his beginning stages of himself. I used to really like listen to like the things that this man would say. But then it got to a point to where I needed to detach from it because I was attaching to it based in an emotional context. Now I hear he don't know the need. Like there's that video when the black girl's twerking in front of her white man, the white dude she with, and he throwing money on her ass, and then all of a sudden they flip the picture, and they're like sitting there with, yeah, she need an alpha, she need a Pan-African alpha male to handle that. That nigga still stuck on physical aspects. That's all that's showing me. I can care the fuck less who the fuck somebody's with. That's just gonna be a reason for me to be upset. Why? Why would I give my energy to that? Why would I transmute my energy through such a low threat? If I can see it, if I can react to it, I'm on that frequency. I'm in that space. That's the first thing I need to accept. If you see it, you get upset by it, it trigger you, you in that frequency. You're not where you thought you were. Accept it, learn, acknowledge, do the healing work, move the fuck on. Become authentic. Stop trying to be stuck in this. Stop being stuck in the necessity complex. Stop connecting to things based on the necessity. Those are my people. Those are my people. I got to make sure all my people is straight. All my people, everybody that is supposed to be in the space is in the space. Whether it's their first time coming through to a lecture, third time, been rocking, they already in the space. I ain't got to worry about shit. What I'm worried about? I gotta reach more people. Why? That's quality. That's quantity. If I got quality in front of, if I'm producing quality, exactly. If I'm producing quality, the true authenticity, from my heart. I'm in the path of my heart. I'm in the aspect of my authenticity. I'm in my higher aspects of myself. I'm always providing into that space. Everything falls into place naturally. I ain't got to worry about that shit. Guess what? Yeah. Oh my God, you can't say that about people. Why not? Because those are your... No, they not. They were associated to me based on the reflections and the aspects that I had to learn about myself. That's what they serve their purpose as. I can tell that they serve that purpose because every time I go back over there, the emotional base that was used to create that space is what erupts when I go over there. So if I go to this space and I get irritated, that means it's a space I don't need to be in anymore. If they're upset at me for any reason, bring it to the throne. Lay them necks down to the king. Lay down. Come sit down. Come take an audience with the God. Oh my God. Yeah. They're showing, oh yeah, damn, you still worried about that? I can give you the game on how to work with that because I learned it. But what about this? Allow the dead to lay with the dead. We don't work in your spiritual work. You don't work with the dead. You work with the living. To be afraid of death is to be afraid to be afraid of death is to be afraid to cast away your existence. I'm no longer afraid to cast away the existence. I existed in their mind as a certain perception, and I no longer fit that behavioral aspect. I don't fit it anymore. The way that they try to attach, they can't attach anymore. This is you integrating with your shadow, because once you integrate with all of your shadows, here's the key point of you severing and cutting these and allowing these anchors to be recessed and pulled back in as you integrate. Every time that you integrate, an inversion takes place. Then it's an inversion that takes place. The light becomes the dark and the dark becomes the light. That's going into that correspondence and going into that gender. What was in the light now becomes the dark, and what was in the dark now becomes the light. It's now the inversion process. Let them get mad. They don't, and that's the thing, is like, that's one thing I had to understand. Like, they weren't getting mad, they weren't getting upset, they weren't getting sad, they weren't getting insecure, they weren't getting jealous. 1 second. That's the whole thing. They weren't getting mad. They weren't getting insecure. They weren't getting jealous. They weren't getting that. That's what they came into that space with originally. So whenever you're looking at relationships and friendships that are ending, and they're talking about the insecurities and their jealousies and their anger, they were already that. You fed that emotional catalyst based on what you projected into that space. That was a part of that affinity complex, so that's how that shit was bonded. So you had that one friend. That was always your ride or die, or they were riding and dying for you, and they was riding with you to go do whatever the fuck they were doing. The moment that you no longer needed that, the insecurity that fed their syndrome or that emotional complex of them being that way for riding for respect, no longer feeling disrespected, you no longer needing the necessity to be seen as being real. Now you're seeing it for what they really are. We are much more than we are more free. Exactly. Yeah. That's an exact point. You sitting there in that space with yourself and you mad. What you letting go of, that shit don't even exist anymore within people. You said that they were already that. They were already upset and insecure and all that shit. They were already jealous. When you start removing those identities and those the emotional taglines, and they don't have anything else to foot, they don't know how to charge themselves. They don't know how to feed themselves. They don't know how to do that shit. That's why they connect to you. It makes you think about, I tell people all the time, I don't miss people. I don't miss people. I don't. I've never had the complex of missing people. And when I did have that missing aspect at first, it was based on me being, because of the separation anxiety, because between the ages of 13 and the ages of 13 and 17, I lost like 27 family members. Yes. Yeah, like you can't be you're refining yourself and bringing yourself to the highest quality of yourself. You ain't sitting here like every year, think about it like this. In every year that you move, you level up. You level up in some way, shape, or form in your life. Something levels up. But with that level up comes aspects that you need to do to the next level so you can actually get to the next level. Mm-hmm. Yes. That's your actions. Remember, we talked about that before with the aspects of your actions or your emotions. The only thing that what time breaks down into is your emotions. Your behavior or your identity, your behavior or the philosophy of your identity is what cements you into that timeline. That's what created your behavior and created that timeline. That's the only thing that creates time. Time is based in aspects of all that shit's based in your emotional aspect. That's why we've said it before, and I talk about when I work with my clients based on your traumas. Whatever you didn't deal with, what happened to you when you were 11, 12, 13, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 18, 16, whatever age it was, if you haven't dealt with it, that's one of the points where your emotions are stuck. Your emotional development is stuck at that point. You didn't grow physically. You didn't probably grown physically. You didn't got some money. You didn't got some money with yourself. You didn't done some good things. Hands up, hats off to you. But you still stuck in that emotional catalyst when you were 5. That's why whenever you lose the money, you act like the 5-year-old. That's why whenever you lose the relationship, you act like the 11-year-old. Some of y'all are still going back through the process of that divorce that you haven't processed that happened, or the split that happened between your parents, or your parents never fully coming together when you was 12. When you was 12 years old. So you still stuck in that space. So every relationship guess what every relationship feeds from? The point when you were 12. That sexual trauma, that experience that happened to you when you was in your teens, your preteen years. It keeps repeating in your space, whether it's your son going through his cycles, his trials, your daughter, your niece, your nephew, whoever, they going through their cycles, or you're in a relationship where you think it was okay to get knocked upside your head, only be called a bitch when you was in bed. Mm-hmm. It depends on you. You afraid to become that gold. You're afraid to become that pure aspect of yourself. That's why you keep coming out really, really ashy. And you're afraid to go through the process of polishing yourself up. Because you wanted that shit you wanted it to come out. What happens a lot of times is you want the team to come out in a certain way because you're still stuck in that emotional aptitude. I've been through all of this bullshit in my life. I deserve something better. I've been through all of this emotional. I've been through the struggle and I've been through the pain. So I deserve to come through something better. Okay. All right. Remember, your unseen creates your space. So now you're trying to make every relationship better than the first relationship you ever saw. You're trying to replace the parts. You're literally hoarding. You're literally hoarding your life. You're literally hoarding with your life. And then the physical representation becomes your space. Remember, all this shit starts in the aspects of that whatever's in the unseen of your subconscious or in that occult sense, the hidden aspect. And then it physically becomes your thoughts become your emotions, and the emotion becomes the physical catalyst. So if you haven't dealt with it up here, if you have not dealt with that repressed memory, it always feeds the thought form. It now projects from you. That's how it comes into your space. None of that shit exists out in front of you. I talked about this in earlier lectures. There's a McDonald's up the corner. There's a McDonald's up the street from my apartment. There's a McDonald's up the street. I don't notice that McDonald's because everything that was in representation of the McDonald's no longer I've assessed and dealt with. That doesn't mean that the McDonald's does not still exist. It just means that in my path, McDonald's is not a part of my path. Take that same synonymous thought process. When you start healing when we start healing these wounds in sessions, the same thing that used to exist, it no longer has the same face. The skull is that skill. You can make that shit a beautiful fucking opening of everything of beauty, or you gonna make it look like something fucking horrible. It's your decision. When I look outside, even when it's raining outside, it's a purpose. Like, okay, it's time to cleanse. I have control over that. That I take responsibility over that. That means I need to assess the things that need to get me closer to where I need to be. I need to assess the aspects of myself that need to bring me closer to myself and stop separating myself away and stop putting these things in front of me that always seem to burn out. Those batteries that I keep trying to keep charged up. I keep trying to put those relationships in the freezer, wrap them motherfuckers in foil so the charge lasts a little bit longer. That ain't how it works. I can't keep assessing or accessing the aspects of how I used to access it. I can't keep doing the same things that I did in the beginning of relationships with myself when I go through the experience phase, and now I'm going into that with myself. I got to change. Every relationship, every job, everything that you come into, the first half is experience. The second half is observation. Once you've mastered observing these experiences, you're now going to the space, that integration process, you start seeing everything as an observation. I'm humbled to be at the space of observation. Stop denying yourself. Why are you really having that conversation? Why are you really having that conversation with those people? What are you really fighting against? as we always do around this time. Yeah. Stop filling yourself up based on excellent. You know the difference between necessity and authenticity. Think about it like your car. If you know that it takes $20 to fill up the $20 to put your tank at half, then you automatically know it takes $40 to put that bitch on full. As an example. So if I know this, why would I only put 20 in my tank just to basically feel I'm still filling my tank fucking twice? Whether I fill that bitch up with 40 and then maintain it at half and then keep putting 20 in it, or do I want to keep tricking myself and keep putting my tank at half and make it like I'm doing something? That's the example of you maintaining your identity. You tell yourself you want to rise into your higher aspect, but you happy with this the getting by aspect. Everything in your life is based on you getting by, either getting by or you doing it to your heart's desire. I can't make you do that. Nobody can make that. Has to be a decision by you. You got to be ready for that. And you got to accept the aspects of that purpose. That's only a reflection of some other shit in your life. If you only filling your take up at half times based on the necessity to get by, think about everything else in your life that you're doing just to get by. Because everything else reflects of the same. It's all the same reflection point. It's time for that. It's time for you to sit with yourself. You hearing that echo. You getting the dream every fucking day. You getting the echo hitting you every fucking day. The angel numbers and the spirit numbers keep hitting you every single day. You keep seeing ladybugs and bees and snakes and spiders and shit. And you ain't reading up on the signs of what the fuck that shit mean. Everything leading you to success. But you want to stay down here in survival. I don't want to be in survival. I want to be in success. I am success. In order for me to be success, in order for me to be the success, in order for me to be this success in my authenticity, I gotta remove and assess everything that's gonna keep me from being the authentic self. Once I do that, I'm unstoppable. You've always been unstoppable. You put in the stops. You stay festering in that wound and you allow more stops to be created based off of you. It's all created based off of you. But as we always do at this time, it's question and answer period. This that question and answer period. Also, live readings. You know, we do the live readings around this time. The readings are based on donation. So drop what you want to read it. Say that you want that reading over there, whatever you feel. Cash up links at the top. Much gratitude for the love and support of the lessons. If you learned something, go ahead and so the reciprocity is much appreciated. While you formulating your questions, well, you know your sessions are on Saturday, so it just depends on what time you want to set up your session. You know, we can do the session at 12, we can do the session at 3, we can do the session whenever you want to tomorrow. Y'all heard it. My sister is saying that. My sister said, if you are ready for your shadow work consultation, the shadow work consultation is $100. It's gonna be the best hour and 45 minutes of your hour and 45 minutes, minimum 2 hours, go longer of your life. We assess and bring everything to the surface that you ready for. When you're ready for it, y'all better take up on the offer. If you're ready for it, set up that appointment. We can get you set up the appointment. We can set up your appointment. Get you plugged in for next week. Get you plugged in Tuesday through Thursdays when I do most of the consultations. She ain't playing. She's dead. She is dead serious. She is dead ass serious. If you want a review based on sessions, there's people there are motherfuckers that are watching you right now, just your first time in here, that have had a shadow work consultation with me, and they will tell you, and they will the aspects of what comes to the surface. I'm not one to pitter pat and make you feel good. I'm here to make you better. I'm here to make you, the perception changes, everything's gonna change. That's what I do. Like, yeah. Ooh, child. But while everybody's formulating their questions, any thoughts, any comments, I'm gonna do a collective reading. If the reading resonates with you and you feeling like, God damn, he talking about me, we can do a more personalized reading for you. Get it more personal for you. Whether it's a cut the cord, whether it's a past life, whether it's a cut the cord, whether it's a past life, whether it's a life path, whether it's a clarity, whether it's general energy. I also do more in-depth readings, life tree readings, all of those readings. Those are the ones I don't put out. But like, you hit me up in the inbox, hit me in my inbox on Facebook, or hit me in my DMs on Instagram, or hit the number that's up there with the Cash App link, and we can set that schedule up. I'm here as the vessel for you to learn yourself. I'm always going to take you back to you. I can't do it any other way. I know what that weight feel like. Let me sit here and play with the cards. Let's play with the cards. First card popping off top. You got the Princess of Swords. The princesses are the pages. Princesses are the pages. They're the aspects of opportunity. The Princess of Swords is the opportunity of that change and assessing what needs to be cut. That means, especially now with this new moon energy, being in Cancer is going to be, it's a very emotional time. She's always in that stance. But we're looking at the opportunities with yourself. It's time to assess those opportunities. You in a space right now where it's your first time coming through, reading on the energy, you're going to come back and you coming through the playback. It's time to assess what you know. You know what you've been needing to cut out. You know what you've been needing to deal with. This new moon or the new satellite in Cancer ass energy. It's a very emotional aspect. So it's time to look at those emotional aspects that have come up during those retrograde periods, especially Chiron coming into retrograde now. It's time to assess. Stop trying to put that shit back in to the hole or into the vault. It's time to allow that shit to come out. It's time to deal with those things, bring to the surface. The Princess of Pentacles illustrates. Next card is the Queen of Wands. You cannot move forward without taking this opportunity to assess what needs to get cut out, you can't tap into that nurturing your energy. You're at a moment in time right now where you seem like to keep doing the same aspect or keep going the same exact route over here in the corner somewhere to deal with your shit or to keep running away from it. You can't nurture yourself based on holding on to those old emotional aspects, these old emotional paraphrases. You still trying to maintain that identity. You can't nurture yourself trying to maintain the identity. You only can do one or the other. Either you're gonna start doing the internal aspects of the authentic, getting to the authentic self, or you're gonna maintain the necessity. The necessity is a byproduct. So the more that you start working with your authentic self, the natural aspects of the necessities that are needed for you to be more authentic to yourself, be more true to yourself, tap into the aspects of yourself, the more naturally it's going to be nurtured. We have to shift ourselves from, I need to maintain this and this and this and this. Some of that shit that's causing you high amounts of stress you're supposed to let it go. You can be 9 months behind on you can be 6 months behind on your car payment. You can be 6 months behind on your car payment, and you trying to pay the bare minimum balance, and it's stressing you out. But meanwhile, you don't have insurance. You cut away insurance to keep that payment up. You speeding the work, so you got some tickets, so now your license has been revoked. Do you really need the car if you don't have insurance? If you don't, what is the point of having the car if you know you need the insurance and the license to keep that shit going? So what are you holding on to? You sitting there with your house right now, and your house is in foreclosure or whatever it may be, and you upset because the only thing you thinking is, I cannot go back to my mama house. But maybe it's time for you to go back to your mama house and deal with some of those emotional wounds. Maybe it's time for you to go back to your mama house and deal with some of those emotional wounds. Instead of you fighting what's pushing you back over there, it's time to go back over there. Which leads into the aspects of that 3 of Cups. You keep focusing on the old aspects of what you were abundant in. I've said this before many, many times. When it comes to the aspects of your abundance, you were already abundant. Being abundant was already a natural aspect of yourself. Being abundant was already a natural aspect of yourself. It's already natural. What are you abundant in? You got a lot of drama going on in your life. You got a lot of emotional aspects in calamity and chaos going on in your life. You're abundant in those aspects because remember, your unseen creates your space. So what do you think you're going to keep connecting to? Time to assess. You keep trying to fill up you keep trying to use that same old dirty ass mop, use that dirty water to try to maintain yourself in it ain't working no more. You know it ain't working no more. The same way you approaching your relationship, the job, friend, all that shit, you know it ain't working no more. It's time to shift it's retrospective that abundance. And that leads into, because until you do that, it's always going to be this 5 of Wands aspect. We see the scarab at the top, or we see the balance. You keep trying to balance the chaos. Remember, chaos comes before order. It's a natural aspect. You keep trying to keep yourself balanced between the chaos and the conflict. What is that doing? You'll never reach this point of balance. You'll always be stuck down here. You have been, when do you want to set up your appointment? The tagline was for the person that was brave enough to want it. When do you want to set up? When do you want to set up your appointment? I have Tuesday, Wednesday, after 12. I have Tuesday and Thursday after 1 available. And I have Thursday before 3:45 open. Go into this space. You can't come up into this balance. This is the point of balance. That's the little black dot. As you're also looking at right there in the center, that's that horn aspect. When you get stuck, you see you keep getting stuck right here. This is always that opportunity for you to rise up out of here. That chaos and that conflict that you're going through with relationships, friendships, all that shit, you trying to maintain yourself down here, all that shit burning up. Let it burn. It's time to assess authenticity. Stop trying to maintain relationships based on necessity. They're always going to need you, and you're always going to be willing to give. They're always going to need you. They're always, because you're willing to give to them. You're always willing to be the giver. It's time to stop being that giver and start giving to yourself. That goes into the aspects of that possession. You trying to possess control over everything. You still trying to hold on to that relationship. You still trying to hold on to that old mentality. It's time to let go of that old mentality. This is the opportunity to assess what you've been nurturing, to assess what you've been putting your energy into and how you've been filling yourself up. As you notice, you see how that every time you fill yourself up, it goes into everybody else. It's time for that balance. It's time to rise into your seat. It's time to rise into your seat. It's time to rise into your space. It's time especially for my sister from the last, when we did her Saturday consultation, that's the one thing that we had to get into. Time for her to start stepping into her position. Time for her to start stepping into position. It's time to let go of everything that you possess based upon necessity. It's time for you to step forward. Got a lot of swords in this. A lot of y'all are still holding on to the old sorrows, the old aspects. You still trying to maintain the identity in that old pillar aspect. This is you in that center point. Move them away. Break that ceiling. And this is always my favorite card from this deck because it represents the aspects of me in it. And in moving forward as that emperor, you know what you need to do. You know what you need to bear your light onto. Your light been shining on the same aspects, and every time that you doing some shit, every time you wake up, your light shine onto the same things that you need to deal with, and you are not dealing with them. That's what has you in this opportunity. You're in the opportunity of what are you about to do next? What are you wanting to do? How are you wanting to do it? When are you wanting to do it? How are you wanting to do it? What is the time to assess? What is the time to learn for yourself? The old shit, the old paradigm dead. The old paradigm been dead. I said that, like 7 classes ago. These are my favorite 2 right here. Last 2 cards I'm going to pull on the collective. Tower card and the King of Swords. It's time to stop being in that state of that fear aspect. You know what's about to fall apart. It's already been falling apart for a while now. The key about a lot of people and the things that you have let go, the key of remaining so the thing they naturally now, so it doesn't return, is understanding the true points of what you let go and why you let it go. It's not going to be a surface answer. This is what a lot of people like, because I remember for myself, I remember I would sit there and be like, I'm letting go of people every fucking month and every fucking week. But then the same energy that, remember, we talked about emotional emphasis, that emotional paraphrasing, the same emotional paraphrase or the same affinity complexes kept me connected to those same people because I wasn't addressing, not saying in particular, but I wasn't addressing why I let them go in the first place. What was it root? What were the roots of why we came together, or they came into my space in the first place? A lot of relationships will repeat themselves until we assess those aspects. You can't move any far. It's good. We feel good. Yeah, I let go. I feel free. Heard Thursday after 1. I'll send you the what's called in the messenger. You letting go, there's a 2-part process. Exactly what Johnny Mac said before it collapses. Regardless, you can let it go, but it won't collapse. The emotional aspects of yourself, the emotional paraphrase, that affinity point, that complex will keep it living. You have to assess inside of yourself. We have to assess inside of ourselves why that came into existence in the first place. That allows me. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love that shit. I love it. I love it. When we understand that everything around us is to take us into our true self, your authentic self, you understand the reason. Now you can step into the realm of observation. So now you get to see when they repeat themselves. Yes, that's always the major key. Like that respect of ourselves. I remember you can go into a point with yourself where like you'll understand that when you're letting shit go, for example, for Queen Amani, like you'll understand when you're letting shit go and it keep repeating itself for something as simple as you're not respecting yourself. So now things keep coming back into yourself that keep testing the respect that you have for yourself. That's the experience point. The observation point is learning how to assess assess your standards to naturally remember, because I told you like boundaries naturally set themselves just like barriers. So if my standards are based in the lower aspects of myself or in my ego or in the lower realm of necessity, gave it a whole new name, gave it the true title. If my standards are based on necessity, then my boundaries are barriers to maintain the necessity. If my standards are based upon my authenticity, then my barriers now become boundaries. Your boundaries are the best way that I can explain the visual of a boundary. Your boundary is clear. It's the glass house. We use the glass house visualization in sessions. The glass house. Written on that glass house is everything that is needed. Is your standard is written on the glass house. The glass walls, your standards are written on the wall. If they can't read those standards or they're triggered by those standards that you set based on your boundary, they can't come in. They can't even assess your energy. When you have a barrier put up based on the necessity you remaining in an identity, they'll always be able to, because they can write whatever they want on the wall. Think about it. They can write whatever they want on the wall. They can chisel whatever they want in the stone. They can whitewash it, blackwash it. But I did this for you back in 2007. I did this for you back in 1999. And that can give them access into your barrier because it's an emotional aspect. That boundary, that's that glass. That boundary, that barrier, that boundary is glass. Everything that you've written about owning your story onto that space. So now when they come up to that space, best way to explain it, when they come into that space with you and they try to say something that they did to you back in 1999, you've already written it up on the wall. Yes, you did this you helped me back in 1999 when I was going through this. And then, yes, I thank you and I appreciate you for what you did. But at this point in time, it's not needed. That's your boundary. That's your standard. That barrier, they write whatever they want on that wall. So the next time you go look at, they whitewashing the walls in Kemet. They whitewashing the walls in Egypt. They keep trying to take my shit. They only gonna take because you let them get it. You didn't understand how to use it. You didn't understand how to use it. Mm-hmm. That's that accountability aspect. That's one of the deepest parts in the aspects of that learning. People only disrespect because you're disrespecting yourself. People only hurt you because you're hurting yourself. They only can do based on the reflection of you. If you react to it, that means at some point in time, you're disrespecting yourself in some type of way. That emotional aspect. I remember sitting there with myself, feeling like, 1 second. I remember motherfuckers trying to. I remember when like that complex of the disrespect and like feeling like I had to prove myself. And I would sit there with myself for like long periods of time, and be like, yo, motherfuckers disrespecting me, trying to say that I ain't real, and always ain't no one gonna come at me and say some shit like that to me. They don't know who the fuck I am. I was only pulling from an argument. I've talked about that argument before. I'm pulling from the same 13-year-old argument that I had with my mother. I'm pulling from the same space from the argument that I had with my mother when I was 13, as an example. Mm-hmm. That's a beautiful example. Because they want you to keep looking at it. You want to keep holding yourself up. Man, why would they put that? You'll get mad at some shit like that. Be like, oh my God, they got the. You mad at that? Why? That's their life. That's everything based in the physical realm. That's what they live off of. That's why they got war museums and shit. They got whole war museums with war rooms and shit. But you still, I ain't seen one slave ship yet. What would that tell you in your analytical and logical mind? They have all of this other shit, but the same way they ain't got no bodies from Jesus' time in the fucking shit. They got all this Jesus time. They ain't got nothing from the BC era when Jesus existed, or none of them niggas in the damn museum. Why the same way with slave ship? You still hold on to the emotional aspects of your Think about it. Some of that shit just don't make, when you get to a certain point with yourself, that shit don't make sense. It just don't make sense. The dynamic of it don't make sense. And you got to accept, and that's the challenge for yourself. That's an external challenge. If I tell motherfuckers like, nigga, slavery never happened. Slavery, to me, in my mind, the way I've got it to a certain point, the way that they depict slavery when every time I think about it, I think about the Vietnam War and why that bitch was televised. Or I think about the moon landing. Or I think about those aspects. My mind don't go back to, oh my God, they had us locked up and shit. Because there's the written aspects. Our fucking elders have already said that when they went to most of these civilizations, them shits were all, nigga, they just went in because there was nobody there. There was never a fight. And it all falls in line with, okay, we going back further and further to sleep. We prophesized half of the shit. We wrote it down. So, like, why would I sit there and still be stuck on that aspect? It was the Vietnam War was a televised war. A whole war that was televised. You mean y'all sitting there watching niggas shoot back and forth? And then it make me go further when I'm looking at, like, y'all remember when the Noah movie came out? When the Noah with the Vikings and shit and all that? I'm like, they just keep trying to paint this picture to make that shit look real. So I can emotionally invest into it with my emotions that I ain't dealt with. What am I doing? What am I doing? What am I doing? That's right. I'm doing me. There's just certain things that you got to let go of. Even going down to the aspects. I remember just thinking about certain things that I learned in school. And I never had a love for history. History never sat right with me. Like, it's something that never could implant into I never could, like, take it in for what it was. But when it came to, like, math and science and shit like that, math and science was my shit. Biology was my shit. Chemistry was my shit. We're gonna stop investing in this bullshit. It's always been you. That's what I need you. I don't need you to understand it. Take what you need. But yeah. Yeah, you can't. There's certain shit, like, it comes to you like, nigga, don't make no sense. Wait. You can't. It's like there's certain things just don't set right in your mind and they don't set. And the reason they sat into your mind because, like, it was nostalgia. Like, okay, cool. They gave you some Christopher Columbus discovered them. How, nigga? Take what you need. Use it as you will. Build your aspects in the connection of yourself. Stop avoiding what you need to deal with. Stop avoiding what you need to deal with. Or you'll keep falling into the same emotional paraphrase, the same prismatic effect, that same alpha and beta, or that spiritual ego. That same identity that you tried to take when you was a little kid down here and you were protecting yourself, you taking it up here and using the same damn aspect. That's why you ask the same damn questions. It's time to grow. It's time to learn. It's time to be fucking great. It's time to be fucking great. What's about to do? What's about to say? Yeah. Time to be fucking great. Been past time. What you gonna do? You've always been in the right fucking position. What are you gonna do with the position that you are now in? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's one thing that I learned way back that's one thing that I learned way earlier on. I was like, when I first read the book Dirt, if you have not found the book Dirt, I think I have the PDF somewhere in one of my flash drives. The book Dirt, or the assessing of how they created the white man and they civilized the motherfuckers. It was just so many things that I looked at. I was like, all right, cool. They have your shit. Come get it back. Okay, cool. I can't take back what I don't understand, but inside of myself, I can't activate it. I'll be doing the same thing that they're doing. The same false entitlement that most motherfuckers are doing in my life. I wanted to have everybody around me. For what? I didn't know how to use them. I only can use them based on emotional concept. Once the emotional aspect didn't work, then now I'm irritated. You don't do this no more. You don't do that anymore. I wish you would do more of this. That's emotional shit. Why? Give me a why. Give me a plan. You give me a plan of attack, we can put it together, we can assess it, we can comprehend, we can move forward. You can't give me something based on emotion, because I only can assess things in a higher aspect. So you give me something based on emotion, I'm going to literally burn that shit the fuck up in order to get to the core aspect of it. That is the mindset. That is the higher realm. That's your higher self. Start thinking like the fucking higher self that you are. I appreciate y'all for stopping through. Appreciate everybody that came through and dropped in. Gonna set up that consultation for Thursday at 1. Get that set up. Sis, whenever you're available tomorrow, just let me know and hit me up in the inbox, and we'll set up your session. Anybody else you're interested in a session, from Shadowwood consultation to a reading to any of that aspect, hit me up in the inbox. Darsam D. Ra. Hit me up on Instagram at Papa_Lucy 666. And let's get that work started. I love you. I want you to be fucking great. We are be fucking great. Be fucking great. Be fucking honest. Be fucking step into your authenticity and stop allowing what's happening to you and blaming it on everybody else. It's time to shift up. I love you. We love us. Ashe.